Hello and welcome to this special Halloween stream. We still don't have a better title for this series, but we certainly have some great content and a rather unusual stream. Most of them have been about movies or the topic of horror generally, but this is a real special stream that I've wanted to do for ages on a game. That is the game Silent Hill 2. And a wonderful game that is rather dear to me because I did not have a great amount of exposure to survival horror. Um, so when I played this as maybe like the second or third survival horror game ever, it hit me like an absolute ton of bricks. And I don't think anything else really ever measured up. You can understand where I'm coming from, don't
Of
you,
course, and
Yizz?
I don't think anything else ever will. I love this kind of game. I've been into weird point and click adventure and story games ever since the dawn of PC gaming,
Mm.
and nothing that I have ever played is like Silent Hill 2. And I am very thankful that you wanted to talk to me about it because I love it. I'm passionate about it. I understand it, and I have researched quite a bit about it. So I am very thrilled to talk about it today and what makes it special and why you should check it out.
Oh, fantastic! Well, people should know you are a regular guest on this channel, and when you show up, it's a high quality research stream.
I
Maybe a
appreciate that.
quality that I think is a bit underappreciated. I think people need to know that you put the work in, and you always turn up with great notes.
Well, thank
Um,
you. I think that's a big part of me is anything I do I take seriously and I put effort into, and especially when it comes to passions and things I enjoy, I go the extra mile. And not just last night and this morning did I comb through notes and wikis and Reddit posts and things, just collecting some ideas and things that might be fun to talk about for us. But over the last month, I replayed through the original Silent Hill for PlayStation 2. I watched a 10 or 12-hour stream series from one of my friends from back in the Something Awful days, who has a very old playthrough of the original. And I watched that same man 15 years later play through the Bloober Team remake. So I have been diving deep with my spare time the last 3 weeks into Silent Hill 2 in preparation for this stream.
oh, fabulous! I will say I have also been watching a Blooper Team playthrough by a clueless but adorable Canadian Zoomer, and well, I still wanted to review the original, and let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. And if we ever do cover the remake, it'll be its own thing later. But today, I just want to talk about the original, not the HD re-release, not the additions that or changes that were made. We're only going to be talking about the actual original Silent Hill 2 and what makes it special. And we're going to dissect it like a deep dive that we do on double horror, double
Double
feature
feature
horror
horror
show.
show.
Yes,
It's a
I knew I would get
mouthful, isn't
eventually.
it?
Double feature horror show on Thursdays. Yes, that's how we're going to talk about this today, and that's what my notes reflect. Because I'm in the habit of making notes this way when I come onto a stream with you about movies. I decided since this game is more of a interactive visual novel slash movie than it is a game, I felt like that would be the correct approach in making my notes about it.
Mm.
So most of my notes are not about the gameplay at all. It's about themes, stories, characters, interpretations, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that is a smart way to do it. Just before we started talking, you said this. You described Silent Hill 2 that way, where it's more like a story. And I
Yes.
realized that when you said that, that encapsulated part of what felt so wrong to me about the Blooper Team remake is that it
Yes.
it was too in love with itself as a game.
Yes. But let's not get off on that
We
because
won't.
I
We
will be
won't.
here for an hour telling you everything wrong about it. So let's save that for
Uh,
another stream.
cool, cool. I'll give us a little lead in about something that has really grown, like just as an overview before we really get into the weeds.
Mhm.
If you aren't a fan of Silent Hill 2, if you never encountered this might be a little hard to get into, but I can't emphasize enough how good it is and how worth playing it is. And there's one of the really unique qualities about it that impresses me is that this is a Japanese game that gives you a admiring foreign look at Western culture.
Hmm.
Sort of specifically.
Specifically New England and
Mm,
America and English movies. Yes, horror
yes,
movies, I should say.
it's Japanese creators looking at something we've made and giving it the thumbs up, and I think that's pretty nice. That's a good feeling. Like when Akira Kurosawa made a whole bunch of movies based on Shakespeare. It is
Hmm.
just a nice compliment. We are so used to, all the J horror remakes, all the K horror remakes, all that stuff about looking elsewhere and saying, oh, they do it so much better. And, it's pretty nice to pay attention to someone looking at us and saying, we've created something wonderful. So Silent Hill is this, I guess, reworking of Western culture in a really appreciative way.
Yes, and you
Strikes
can
me as
feel
very
that when you
special.
play it if you're keyed into things like we are. You can feel that.
Mm. Yeah,
I'm
so
glad you brought up Shakespeare because my first note that I wanted to speak on to set the stage is a famous Shakespeare quote: "The play is the thing. The play's the thing." Uh, and if are you familiar with that phrase and what it means?
no, I'm trying to think where it's from. Wait, is that
I
Hamlet?
think it's from Hamlet. It's either
Oh.
Hamlet or King Lear, maybe both. But the concept of the play's the thing. It's part of a soliloquy in one of the. I'm pretty sure it's Hamlet, but my Shakespeare stuff is like 25, 30 years ago. I did it in high school, and then I didn't approach it after that. But in the years afterwards, cultivating my thoughts, cultivating my way of speaking, I came across a phrase that I really like: "The play's the thing," which means the thing of it is the doing it, is the acting, is the play. It's not
Mhm.
about the history. It's not about the actors that are on stage. It's not about how about these wonderful new words I created as Shakespeare. The thing that we're here for is this experience. And
Mm.
that defines Silent Hill 2 more than any pithy quote that I can think of. When it comes to Silent Hill 2, the play's the thing. This experience is what this game is. It's not about
Mm.
killing monsters. It's not even about making you afraid. It's a survival horror game by genre, but it's not really that scary. It's not really
Mm.
about fear. It's about loss and pain and experiencing what it's like to see a synthetic, weird, fake, otherworldly Lynchian experience that touches on some of the most real challenges and real darknesses that human beings face. And
Mm.
so the play is the thing. That experience is all that Silent Hill 2 is, and that's what it's meant to do. And so we'll get into it, but I just really wanted to sort of summarize this whole discussion with the play is the thing. And remember that going forward, that all of the stuff in this game is in service to you having this experience remotely
Mm.
that you spent your $40 and bought a PS2 game for. The creators wanted you to have this experience and nothing and everything else is secondary to that.
Yeah, you have to go through it, and nothing will compare to you going through it and feeling it. I won't say walking in James' shoes, but it's more like being there with James as he goes through this.
Yes. Yes. And let me get to my notes here about the actual gameplay itself and what it's like because I wrote some things I'm kind of happy with here. Let
Mm.
me find this. I'm sorry, my notes are a little disorganized because I didn't know the structure that we were going to have. Uh,
It is tough to know how to approach a game like this. To be honest,
yeah, let
I've
me.
never talked about a game before.
Let's see. Yeah, here we go. This is what I wrote about just what it feels like to. This game is unique for this reason. I'm just going to read this. The
Mm.
game is melancholic and almost dreamlike, with many parts of it almost serene in its own somber way. It feels like helping a person get through an elaborate dreamscape where you, the player, are not privy to what's inside the person's head, nor their personality. You're just along for the ride, helping him make decisions and discover his deeper story and things that his mind has buried. You float into and out of a nightmare during this dream, and this overall is a bizarrely pleasant and fascinating adventure through a troubled person's microcosm. What do you think
Mm.
about that? Is that a good way to summarize what this game is and what it feels like to play?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a game that fairly swiftly abandons pretenses of reality, and you just go with the surrealness that you are in, effectively an impression of a space that will
Exactly.
change with the moods. There's
Like we've all had dreams where it's like the dream is normal, like you're at school or at work or talking to your mom in the house you grew up in, and then you open a door and you're, on a pirate ship that's flying through the clouds, and there's like dragons over there, but they're having tea or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
this game quickly dispenses with the this is real and you are in a dreamscape where nothing is real and this is all fantasy land.
Yeah, it gives you a nice clue. When you start, after that beginning where you are just, James is looking intensely into a mirror, giving you the clue of self-examination. Um, he walks down a foggy wooded path, and I may be reaching here, but it kind of made me think of Dante's Inferno, which starts off, you get lost in the wooded
Hmm.
path, and except James doesn't really ever meet a guide who helps him. You're
Mm-mm.
kind of the one who's meant to guide James
Yeah, you're
through.
the guide. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
you are the guide that helps guide him. He's lost in the woods. He's
Mm.
lost. Like, the game opens up with James staring at himself in the mirror, and he touches his own face to see if he's real. And the only path that he can go on is into Silent Hill, but the main roadway is barricaded up, and so he has to take a side path that takes him through the woods. And it's a beautiful, foggy, serene woods. And again, the game is almost never scary. It's just otherworldly and spooky in a way, because it's strange, and the way that they build and release tension with music. And there's almost no comedy or humor in the game either. It's a very somber experience. It's almost
Mm.
humorless. And it's like you are the guide. You are the one that helps James find his way. And we'll get into the different endings of the original game later, where the player's choices actually matter, but the choices are very hidden and strange, which we'll get into later. But um, it's right. It's like he is lost and having to find his way, and the game sort of intersects with the other two main characters who are also on that same kind of journey, because you find out Silent Hill. You don't find out why, but you find out that Silent Hill as a place has supernatural powers that draw people in and create fantasy as reality. And whatever Silent Hill is, whatever the magic of it can create monsters, it can create new people, it can create different sensations like burning and drowning and monsters and chains and pain and joy. Like, this place is basically like a dream engine. And for whatever reason, it likes to pull people in that are severely troubled and have broken, damaged minds. And I think that's a really unique concept for a game setting, and that's why I think the early Silent Hill games really work. But you find out quickly that James is here because he has a dead wife, and Silent Hill is where they went for their last vacation or fun times that they did together before she got a terminal illness and died. And the thing that's weird, the game opens up with, why is James here? Why did he come back to Silent Hill? He got a letter from his dead wife, which doesn't make any sense. But he tells you, his inner monologue tells you, the letter he got is in his wife's handwriting. He knows and he feels it's from her. He knows it beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's as real to him as anything else. This is a letter from his dead wife, but that can't be. And their special place was in Silent Hill. Maybe it was
Mm.
the hotel that they stayed at. Maybe it was the beautiful lakeside park. But it's definitely in Silent Hill. That's what the special place means. So here is James in Silent Hill to explore why this little old sleepy resort town, where people in New England would come for a nice little getaway weekend or whatever to enjoy the woods and the lake, why is she here? Is she here? How could this letter come to him? It can't be. He tells us in the very opening of the game that his wife has been dead for 3 years, but he got a
Mm.
letter from her. That can't be. If she's here, I have to find her. I have to know. And that's the driving impetus for the first act of the game, or arguably the entire game, but we'll get into that. So that's the opening, and yes, you are here to help James on his journey, and you solve the puzzles, you guide him through the rather meaningless combat that it's not really hard or challenging. It's just there, like everything in the game, in service to the story. So that's sort of my opening talk about what this game is about and why James is here. Do you have anything you want to talk about with this part?
Let's see. We talked about. I think you captured it really, really well. I guess maybe one point you sort of. it all helps you from the start that you're not given a bombastic tone. It's somber. The opening music is haunting. It's a lovely setup, and you're given this long walk into Silent Hill almost as time to sort of digest that knowledge,
Hmm. And to
which
think.
is, yeah, to think
And I think
massively.
that shows you that James has a lot of time on his hands to think, and he's had to put a lot of thought into this, and that the game does this at a few points where you just have a long stretch to go down, like walking down the big
Mm.
ramp, walking to the final door before the end of the game, walking through the woods, the long, slow walk where you don't really know where to go early in South Vale. Like, you have a lot of quiet time alone with James where he doesn't
And
say anything. You don't have anything to say or do. You're just piloting him through this weird, almost completely empty dreamscape of a sleepy little town in North America.
and it's that the descent as well, like descending is a constant theme.
Mm-hmm.
No one's hit, as far as I can remember, hits you over the head and says, "Hey, do you notice he's like constantly descending?" It's like, no, we're going to trust you. Got a couple of brain cells here, and you can pick them
Yeah,
together.
that
Um,
makes this game work. It doesn't hold your hand and give you big obvious signs of you're supposed to feel this now, or hey, this is the context for what this means. The game doesn't do that to you. The creator and the director of the team Silent that made this game, they made it like an intelligent art piece, like an intelligent art film. They didn't insult you. This is not a popcorn horror movie. This is not a I want to kill demons for a few minutes while I have some time to unwind after a long day at work. No, this is not that kind of game. This is not that kind of experience. This is very artful, and it doesn't insult your intelligence. It expects you to understand nuanced human emotions and context in the medium of like film and storytelling.
mm. It also leans a tiny bit into meta, but without anything that tells you, "Hey, we're being meta, we're being smarky." You know, don't take this seriously, like a lot of it does. I'm thinking particularly, you start off and you when you use the saves,
Oh yeah,
you just get this little interesting way where suddenly you're seeing red, you're looking at James. Um, I mean, it's the fact that you save with a red square is really interesting.
it
It's
is. And the notes I have about the red square
oh
in the
yeah,
first Silent Hill game, the character's name's Harry. He's a writer, so his save points are little notepads that he finds, and so he jots down his thoughts. That's the save point. It works fine.
mm,
In this game, it's more obtuse, it's more interpretive. You find these little red squares about the size of a piece of paper that they're not oblong, they're actually square. And the game starts off with James staring at his own face and wondering what's real. And every time you interact with one of these little red squares, the screen goes full red and you get a reflection of James like he's looking into a muddy mirror. It's not a clean reflection, it's sort of wet, which we'll get
yeah.
into later. But it's like James is reflecting on things. That's his save because the whole experience is James reflecting and remembering what he has repressed. So
Mm,
let's go ahead and say this now. The rest of the conversation about this entire game is spoiler territory. So
yes,
if you care about experiencing this yourself raw, which I highly recommend, don't read about it, don't read a walkthrough, don't listen to any commentary. If what we've pitched so far sounds like something for you, pause this now and come back to it after you have played the game to full. Okay.
yes,
Spoiler warning done.
absolutely, absolutely doubling down on that. Yes, it's so worth your time. Ignore the memes. You may have seen Pyramid Head
Oh, and
memes.
by the way,
Ignore.
speaking of time, short game. Short. You can do it all in like
Mm.
an afternoon and an evening. It's not a long game. It's not a long game at all. You can even bumbling and not knowing what you're doing, you can get through it in a day. Like it's not long.
I think that's because of what you said. It's a story, not a game. It could have easily eked the time out,
But
and
it
I
didn't.
don't think it does.
Yeah, I
Um,
appreciate that. I
there was
appreciate that.
one extra point on the saves I just wanted to say,
Hmm.
because I appreciated that they helped you along with that first save point where James says it feels like someone's groping around in my head.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, and this might sound weird, yes. It reminded me of when you get an eye exam.
Oh yeah.
I had a friend who studied that, and I had to sit and be tested by him a lot. And he shines a light, and suddenly all you see is red,
Hmm.
and you see it like from like the eye viscous fluid. It's not a clear red; it's like a
Well,
mucky red. And I
there
thought,
there are
oh,
two interpretations of what that can mean. Because
mm,
with that's in my notes too. Uh, it feels like someone's groping around in my head. James says that once at the first save
mm,
point you come to after the long walk in the woods to before you even get into Silent Hill proper. Now, the interpretations I came across doing my research for this game are as follows. You are helping James through his problems. You're the counselor. You're literally digging around in his head and helping him work through his problems. That's theory number one. Theory number two, the light in the eyes. Someone finds James dead. And when they're checking his eyes or doing the autopsy and finding him dead, because we'll get into that later with the endings,
ooh, I love
the,
that.
the, the game is what, you know how people say your entire life flashes before your eyes? Well, he's in
Mm,
Silent Hill. The entirety of this game could be what James experiences the moment he dies. And the light in the eyes making you see red is one of the ways that in like the early 1900s they would check to see if there's pupil movement to know if someone's dead or not.
mm,
So you know that's cool. So again, the creators of this game have been interviewed about it many times, and there is no canonical interpretation. There are just quotes from the people involved with the game, like the main voice actors, the music guy, the director guy, the writer. And they have said many times, well, I sort of feel like it was supposed to suggest this, but this
mm,
game is meant for you to take away from it what you experience. So they have gone out of their way to say nothing is really canonical about what he did or who died when or how or the resolution that James comes to at the end. It's specifically non-canonical because they wanted it to be open-ended and an interpretive experience for the player. So
mm.
that's just something to point out here. But those are two theories I came across when doing my research is because like specifically with the red square, and it feels like someone's groping around in my head, either a counselor or this is what someone is triggering in his brain like the moment that he's dying or right after he's dead or something.
Mm.
So that's what I came across.
Nice. That those are fantastic additions. Yeah, nice. Um, so we should we maybe. I kind of want to avoid the trap of going fully just like through each stage because I think
Okay.
ah
Well,
I tempting.
then let me take the reins here and say
Please,
that
yes.
what we need to do is talk about this like a movie. Let me give you the brief pint of Guinness description of the game.
Mm,
You are helping a troubled man who has come to an obviously magical town. And the town, at one point, to most people's knowledge, was a serene, quiet little nowhere town in New England somewhere, maybe Vermont, maybe Maine, who knows, that has pretty woods, a nice, pretty lake. It's close to the sea, and it has roots going back to before there was even the ratified United States. So clearly supposed to be New England. James shows up in a regular looking American car. He's a regular looking American guy. And he looks very much like the Joseph character, the main character from Jacob's Ladder, because Jacob's Ladder was the primary inspiration for this game, according to the creators. So he looks like the guy, Jacob. Jacob, the main character in Jacob's Ladder, was troubled by feelings of sexual inadequacy and unfulfillment. He was troubled by a dark past. He had to survive it and get through a weird dreamlike state that involved his own death. So James is very much a character like Jacob from Jacob's Ladder, and the creators are open about this. So
oh
it's not
yeah.
like anything you couldn't figure out easily.
I mean,
Um,
the costume is a very direct
oh
hint.
yes, the costume is
You
very
know.
directly from that, but it's more than that too. It's also in theme and tone. So
Mm,
excuse me. So this man, uh, you help pilot him through a Lynchian Twin Peaks ish type of scenario where the man knows things are surreal and he keeps going anyway because he is driven by one thing: is my dead wife alive? I need to find out how a letter written by a dead woman came to me and why she wants me to go to our special place in Silent Hill. He meets other people who are troubled like him, too. Angela and Eddie, who are also pulled into this magic town, who have dark pasts and are very troubled. And this town, he discovers, gives them each a different experience, and they don't really
mm,
even share the same visuals, the same dangers, the same challenges. Silent Hill is like a dream engine, and it pulls people in, and maybe it feeds on their darkest needs, lusts, desires, and pains. But that's never really explained, and I think the game is better for it. The experience is better for it. So James is introduced to these two people, but most of the movie, quote movie, is 3 acts. Act 1 is him learning that he's here and nothing is as it seems, and he is in some kind of weird surreality. Act 2 is him deciding to move on with the other main character who is here. And you might notice I did not include this other main character with James, Eddie, and Angela. Why did I not include her, PH? Do you want to tell the people listening?
Yes, we're talking about, well, I assume you're talking about Maria,
Yes.
who is a complex person. She is not really there. She is, in the most Lynchian sense, a representative of an idea. And we said Lynchian influences. Oh my goodness. She is concentrated Lost Highway.
Yes.
Patricia Arquette's character. It's it's wonderful. They saw this. They made direct reference to it, so it's all good. In fact, check out any of the street names, and
And
it's always like a
also
horror director or a horror writer.
it also
um,
reminds me of the alter ego character in Mulholland Drive as well.
yes, yeah, definitely. Oh, you're well. It predates it, but yeah, you can't help but not think of it. But of course, Lynch keeps doing these ideas because they really interest him. But yeah, Maria is fantastic. She's extremely ambiguous. If you're looking for answers to how you can get a letter from your dead wife, it doesn't get less complicated when you meet someone who is her doppelganger but behaves very differently to her.
Yes.
James's wife is Mary, and Maria
Hmm.
is nothing like the Mary we see in a photo. She is uh, free. She is very overtly sexual. She is
Hmm.
extremely confident and also healthy.
Hmm. Young, healthy, virile. She's clearly a woman in her sexual prime.
Mm,
She dresses not like extremely sluttily, but she dresses like a young lady who wants to be seen as a desirable sexual figure. And she speaks that way. Uh, there is a. When you. Okay. James meets Maria, and he thinks she's Mary at first because literally, like PH said, Maria is the doppelganger of Mary, the dead wife. And Act Two is sort of about James coming to terms with because part of this game is sort of it's not like an escort mission because it's not like you could die, but like
mm,
but Maria is with you for a big part of the game, kind of in the middle of the game. We'll call that Act Two, and James, through different interactions, monologues, and dialogues he learns that Maria, for whatever reason of this magic town, is the manifestation of either his desires or something's desires to replace Mary. And and again, you don't really decide that. These are things that you're told and you pick up from context clues. Because the
mm,
game, no matter what ending you get, always plays the same. I'm just going to say that now before we get into endings. And Maria is sort of like a troubled character because she has some level of self-awareness that she's not a real person in a way,
mm,
but she also is conflicted and has mood swings where it's almost like Silent Hill has some type of like computational stack error, and she tries to be Mary sometimes and acts like Mary in a way, or in a way that Mary would, like caring about Laura and wanting to find
mm,
Laura and mother her, when that's a Mary desire. And then Maria also gets mad at James for thinking she is Mary and lashes out at him. But then she immediately drops that and wants to be with him and for her to protect her and for him to protect her like she's Mary again. So, or like she's the most important woman to him, like Mary would be. So the game presents this Maria character in a very Lynchian way. That's the only way I can really describe it in a single word. And I think the Arquette's character from Lost Highway is a good way to describe it. So Act two is mostly the hospital and heading up to the historic society site,
Mm,
and we learn along the way that there is another person here who seems to be a real person, and it's a little 8-year-old girl named Laura. Laura, when James meets her for the first time, James needs a key to get through an apartment building just so the story can progress. And he sees it laying through a grate that, for whatever reason, is like a little portcullis that is in the middle of a hallway in an apartment building. James reaches through to get the key. We are introduced to Laura when she skips across the floor and kicks the key out of James' reach and taunts him. I forget exactly what she says. And James is like, WTF? Why this? And so the few times that you have interaction with Laura, she's running away from James and is kind of antagonistic, and you don't know
mm,
why. And then later at the hospital in Act Two, uh, Laura tricks James into going into a room because she says that she's pretty sure that, I think it was Laura says, Laura reveals through a little bit of dialogue that she knows Mary, and that of course entices James, and that's why James wants to follow Laura and talk to her more. But Laura's very like cat and mouse. I'm going to run away from you because this is a game to me.
mm.
And capriciously she traps him in a room with the monster because to her the monsters aren't real, and that's very interesting. She is a
Yeah.
real person in Silent Hill who doesn't have any challenges, who isn't being tormented by monsters, who doesn't seem to have a dark past, and doesn't seem to be troubled or weird at all. She seems to be a genuinely normal 8-year-old girl, and
Mm.
I find that very interesting. What
I
what
don't know
what
how
do you have to say
much.
about that?
Well, I don't know how much emphasis to put on it because it's more of a first time experience. But I think they knew a lot of people will have enjoyed the first game, where
Where you're after a
Alessa,
little girl,
yeah, Alessa, yeah, well, exactly that you're after a little girl, and there's also Alessa Gillespie who was a
Alessa, Cheryl,
little
Heather, all the same girl.
exactly. Um, and I think they probably, with her and Laura's initial antagonism, I think they wanted you wondering, is this Alessa again? Like they
Yeah,
wanted to mess with you a little bit. Like
yeah.
this game is so
Girl evil?
incredibly
Like, is
different
this
to
little
the
girl
originals.
why Silent Hill is all messed up? Is she leading me to my doom? Is she Pied Pipering James to his doom? And as a player
Totally.
who played Silent Hill 1, you'd be thinking these things.
Exactly. It's like, I mean, I didn't. This was the first one I played. I came very late to follow the others, so
Silent Hill 2
I
is the
didn't
first one
have
I
that.
played too as well. It's my
Oh, right.
first experience too, yeah.
Yeah, I just think we were probably meant to have that impression, but yeah, I like Laura. She's interesting to follow around, and you also see that she interacts with Eddie as well. So it's like, okay, Eddie's real.
Yeah, Eddie
Interesting.
seems to be real, so does Laura. And
Mm,
Laura, the reason that, in my opinion, that she's in the game is to give sort of an external, real focus that both James and Mary can share. Um,
mm,
it's revealed to us later, maybe the end of Act Two or in Act Three. It's not really a movie, so it's hard to say, but it's revealed towards the end that Laura knew Mary when she was alive, and it leads James to the most important revelation in Act Three, that Mary didn't really die 3 years ago. She died much more recently than that, because the letter that that he finds that Mary wrote
mm,
was congratulating Laura on her 8th birthday and wishing her well. And we find out Laura's an orphan, and the last letter Mary wrote to her tells her to be nicer to the sisters at the orphanage and cut them a little slack, and to also cut James some slack. The letter says James is not very funny. He doesn't laugh a lot. He has kind of a gruff, obtuse exterior, but he's a genuinely good person that will be good and kind to you. And you find out that Mary wanted to adopt Laura and have her as a daughter with James. And we'll get into the endings later where that might matter. But Laura is a real person, apparently, and it leads James to realize, why did I think my wife has been dead for 3 years when clearly she hasn't been? These are real letters my wife wrote. Why do I
mm.
have them? Why are they here? Why are they in this hotel? And why is this real little girl familiar with my dead wife? And why don't I know her? And James facing his repressed memories and twisted memories is the resolution of the game. it is what the endings are about. It is the meat and potatoes of Act Three. It's basically the climax of the film. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think it's very important. Like after Act Two, then he ends up alone again. And when he's on his own again without Maria, thinking she's died, he then goes through the most sort of twisted, mind bending stuff where
Mm-hmm.
reality, that's one where reality sort of totally collapses. We're getting an almost um, House of Leaves style impossible
Yes. You're
buildings,
talking about the
historical
series through the
society.
historical society and the maybe even completely make believe prison section with all the holes and the weird walls and hallways and things. Yeah, it's very very bizarre, but it's bizarre to play through the first time, and then I really appreciated it on an art level playing through it again.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Little elements like I mentioned the whole, oh, he's constantly descending. It's sort of, yes, you descend into absolute impossible spaces, and when you finish, you pop out just the other side of a building. It's like there's no way what you were shown literally physically happened.
Hmm.
So we've got to read that quite differently, and you've got to at that point start seeing it as a sort of a psychospherical place, a cycle like a, just basically we're not dealing with a spooky town. You know,
Yeah,
you're not going through the
there's
haunted
something more
house.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If all the little hints you've had weren't enough that people are seeing their own version of the town, then that section really has to clue you in. Um, it just sort of mounts up the themes. But yeah, basically, James, after losing Maria, is now totally lost. Where does he end up? A bloody labyrinth. You
Yeah.
know.
So let's talk a little bit now
Mm,
about some important features of the game around James and Maria slash Mary.
mm,
Now, I say Maria slash Mary because of endings, which we will get to later, I promise. The interesting quote unquote villain of the game is a creature known as the Boogeyman, which, of course, everyone dubbed Pyramid Head, and is even and you even see in English Pyramid Head a few times in the game. There
mm.
is, I'm sure that people are familiar with this because it was in the movie, the big Silent Hill movie that came out years ago. Pyramid
Mm,
Head is a thing that's cropped up. It's an iconic piece of visual art that is synonymous with Silent Hill. Well,
totally.
it originates from this game. One of the first truly bizarre, inexplicable things that James sees is very early in the game, like in the first apartment complex when you first find, right after you first find the pistol. James, well, before that, actually, you see Pyramid Head in a distance, but that's just a spoopy. But
Yeah.
you're introduced to Pyramid Head. Why is he called that? He's the muscular, gross guy with like blood and shit smeared all over him that's wearing like a butcher's apron or something in the movie. In the
Mm,
game, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what he's wearing, so it's not exactly a realistic thing. He's
yeah.
wearing clothing and has boots, but like it's kind of hard to tell what any of it's supposed to be, which is good. And he has
Yes.
this weird pyramid like giant metal helmet that's like the size of him that
It's
he wears on
totally
his.
impractical.
It's
It's
absolutely impractical. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
mm.
Like it would weigh 80 or 100 pounds if it was a real iron thing that big. It's ridiculous. But
If I
that's.
can add in
Go
something
ahead.
else really key about him, Pyramid Head is a victim of the meme. The meme Pyramid Head is really not the Pyramid Head you see.
Correct.
Okay, and the movies made him this massive, muscular dude.
Hmm. When
Whereas
really he's
in
not. He
the
looks more like a regular guy, like in body and form.
yeah, and which makes it even weirder that he. I mean, I'd venture he's even slightly skinny or slightly underweight, which makes it even weirder that he can carry this huge sword, this
Hmm.
massive head helmet that must be crushing him. It all adds to the mystery, and it's
In
I
the
don't know.
notes, in the original notes, I think it's called the Boogeyman Spear or the Punishment Spear or something like that. Like
Yeah,
the word spear is in the name for it, but it just looks like a gigantic like filleting knife or something. And
mm,
it's like a 6 or 7 foot long heavy iron thing that must weigh 100 pounds. Like it's ridiculous, and it's sort of sort of like a big Final Fantasy sword, but more like horror movie esque. So we are introduced. James discovers this thing in an old abandoned apartment complex. And what is he doing? He's dragging around these weird mannequin things, which is like a female torso without breasts, and where the arms and legs would be are four thighs of a mannequin.
Mm.
It's very bizarre. It's a bizarre visual. It's very strange. Speaking of the visuals, it is worth noting at this point that the monsters and art design are heavily influenced by Francis Bacon artwork. For those of you
Mm.
that know anything about the game and have dug into it, you probably already know this. But Francis Bacon, I don't personally know a lot about. I learned about him when I went to art school, but he made surreal kind of spooky paintings and artwork, and the monsters and many of the visuals in Silent Hill 2 are based on the artwork of Francis Bacon. So we
Yeah,
see Pyramid Head
especially
dragging.
the. Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Yes,
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just
Go
going to
ahead.
say, especially the paintings in the Silent Hills Historical Society is
Yes.
some of the like most direct Francis Bacon tributes.
Yeah, they might have even been touched up scans of real Bacon paintings, for all I know, because they
Mm,
look just like his artwork.
mm. Um,
So, go ahead.
oh no, I think were you going to lead into that first encounter where yeah,
Yeah,
he's got the
because I want
mannequins
to
and
explain what Pyramid Head is, what the boogeyman character represents, and why it ties into Maria. So, in when James sees Pyramid Head, this thing, the boogeyman doesn't come after James. He leaves him alone. Then that's when you see him in like the weird spooky red light at the end of the hallway. It's just a visual
mm,
spooky. Then you see him later, and when you see him later, it's in a cutscene. He's dragging a body or something that's one of these weird macabre mannequin lady things, and then you see him in a kitchen with one of these mannequin ladies like he is a mix of raping and tickling her at the same time. It's a very
mm.
bizarre, unsettling visual, and one of the creepiest things in the entire game. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's you. I mean, it just surprised me to see it. Like,
It's
what
very
is this?
shocking. It's very
What's this
unnerving when
doing?
you first see it.
Yeah, it's very unpleasant. You're creeped out by these creatures. The mannequins are already they've got this weird sexual tone to them, like the noise they make if you hurt them.
Yeah,
Their design, it's like that's already got a sexual element. You're starting to notice a sexual element turn up, and then you see Pyramid Head violating them. That'll be the word I use.
yes.
And you
It's
sort of, what the heck is going on? It's really um, is it, you wonder, is it just the Wharf effect, as it's called, where look how bad this guy is? He beats other monsters, but he's
yeah,
not doing that. He's not just killing them. He's really inflicting a kind of sadistic glee in getting
yeah,
his pleasure out of them.
and it's very weird and sick, but it's over quickly. And James basically craps his pants and hides in a closet or something, and
Yeah.
he watches Pyramid Head. And when Pyramid Head approaches and just sort of Pyramid Head has no eyes, of course. The boogeyman doesn't have
Mm.
eyes. It's just this big weirdly shaped metal helmet thing. So when he stops close to the thing and just sort of quote unquote stares at James, James doesn't know what to do, so he mag dumps. The pistol you just find, James mag dumps into him, and of course it goes ping 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 and doesn't hurt him. But the boogeyman doesn't attack. He doesn't smash open the closet. He just turns and ambles away out of the room, leading the now lifeless, terrorized mannequin or mannequins laying where they were brutalized.
Mm.
And then the game continues on. So later, James has to confront the boogeyman and to leave. I think the second apartment complex to get back to the South Vale or whatever. James has to confront the boogeyman in a very small room. And what does Pyramid Head do? Well, he comes at you slowly, and when he gets close, he flops that big old sword knife thing at you, and you have to get out of the way. You can't really hurt
Mm.
him, so you just have to wait it out. And so, after a certain amount of time, I don't remember how long, uh, in one corner of the room, there is a stairwell that's full of water, and it's like 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever, that you survived your first encounter with Boogeyman, uh,
Mm.
an air raid siren, like from the Blitz air raid siren, like an old timey air raid siren goes off. And if you've seen the Silent Hill movie, that's why that's in there. And for whatever reason, maybe it's like hearing the whistle blow when you work in a factory. Pyramid Head just disengages.
Mm.
He's done with James. Whatever that siren means, we don't know, and we never know. But to Pyramid Head, to the boogeyman, it means it's time to go terrorize somebody else.
Yeah.
So, like
And
he's quitting his shift at work, He walks down the flooded stairwell like the water isn't even there, and he leaves. And then the water gets drained, and then James can leave the complex and continue on with the game. So
Yes.
that's your first real encounter. Anything you want to say about that? Because it's very
Oh,
interesting and weird.
so much, so much. I mean, for one, let's just share the obvious experience. Maybe like you, I obviously treated it like a boss fight and wasted
Yes,
just.
I wasted
ev-
so many bullets on it trying to and to no avail.
I mean, you can make him go away quicker. I mean, I should specify. I played the Xbox version, which may be
Ah,
slightly different.
it is.
But yeah, the only thing you could do is you can make him go away quicker if you hurt him, but really you
Yes.
can just wait him out,
Yeah.
and that's something you appreciate later. But there's this. It feeds like your idea of you are playing this, but this isn't strictly a game or to be thought of like a game. This
And
looks like a boss fight, but it kind of isn't. It's telling you the
yes,
story purpose. And basically, Pyramid Head is kind of helping you here. Like,
yes.
James could not progress if Pyramid Head did not
Walk down the
open
stairs
the
and defloat
valves. Yeah.
them. Right.
Mm.
So
But
I
also,
feel.
Pyramid Head descends into water.
Mhm.
Mm. That probably doesn't come up at any point ever again.
Hey, we'll talk about water later with the endings, but
Yes.
yes, there's a lot of wet, there's a lot of water, there's a lot of soggy, there's a lot of moldy, stale wet. There's fishing around in toilets. There's putting your hand into wet, moist, gross holes to get items out for puzzles. There's
Yes.
having to clear out water. There's a soaking wet hotel, and for
Mm.
whatever reason, whenever the spooky stuff happens and you have the nightmare sequences, like I mentioned earlier in the game, how you float out into and out of nightmare in a dream.
Mm.
And it's very subtle the way it's presented in this one. It's not as stark as it is in Silent Hill 1. This one is
No.
more of subtle transitions in and out of what people in Silent Hill fandom call other side or the other world. That's the more nightmarish, scary expressions of Silent Hill.
Mm.
And in this game, the Silent Hill side or the other side of James's experience is very wet and soggy and moldy and old, like wallpaper's peeling and things look like they've been flood damaged, that kind of thing.
Mm.
But anyway, moving back to the first encounter with Pyramid Head, the other thing in my notes to talk about this is, like you brought up, this is the first time for many players, myself included, when I played it as a much younger weirdo, because I think I played it in 2002. I think is when I first got it. Um, it taught me this game does what it wants. This game doesn't obey normal video game rules. Something's going on here. Something weird. Because you present to me this boogeyman, you scare me, you show me this horrific cutscene of him doing unspeakable weird things that I don't even understand to these mannequin creatures. Who, by the way, the mannequin creatures have been trying to kill me, so I'm not fond of them either. But like, it gives you this weird sense of pathos that something is really off about this big metalhead guy, and then you have to confront him in a small area. And basically, all you could do is just walk around and try to avoid getting murdered by this giant sword. And so I tried shooting him like 15 or 20 times, and it didn't stop him. And even though there was a little bit of blood poof when you shoot him, I was like, well, clearly I'm not supposed to shoot him. It's doing nothing. So for the rest of the time, I think it's like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's
Mm.
not really long. It's not very drawn out until he leaves when the air raid siren happens. But I was like, okay, maybe I have to bait him into hitting this wall. Maybe he'll break open a way. Maybe I have to bait him into swinging his sword and cutting the door open so I can run away. Oh, okay, well, that's not working. Maybe I have to lead him over to the water and try to get him to swing, and then he'll tumble and fall into the water, and his big metal head will make him sink. I tried to approach it with point and click adventure game logic, and that all that did was just eat up the time until the siren went off and he left. So that experience as a first time player taught me this game is not about combat. This game is breaking the mold of rules that I have learned from what little experience I have with atypical horror type of games. So that taught me, first of all, that combat and monsters only exist to fight in a secondary and tertiary role. The
Yes.
primary reason these monsters are in this game is to show me something and make me feel something and to teach me things about the narrative happening around James. That the first
Absolutely.
pyramid at the head fight is where I really grasped that as like a 22 or 23-year old. What about
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. You are not there to enjoy the combat. It's not about getting a glorious animation where you, like a special kill animation. The combat is deliberately clunky and
Mhm.
difficult. You're not meant to enjoy it. It's meant to be difficult and troubling, and
Well,
you want to sort of get around it.
with Pyramid Head, yes, but again, I have to disagree with you on
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
if you mean that is all the combat, because to me, maybe I'm just good at video games since I'm like an OG or whatever, but like the combat in Silent Hill 2, in my opinion, is so easy it's almost not even an impediment. Like the first weapon you get is a bit of wood. It's a scantling with a few nails in it. And you can whack because there's not many enemy types in Silent Hill, just a handful.
No, no.
And you can whack them 2 or 3 times and they go down, and then you just kick them on your way by, and it's done. I didn't
Mm,
find the combat hard at all, except for the set pieces, which are actually kind of challenging. And that also taught me, okay, this game is not about the combat because it gives you plenty of health items to heal what
mm,
little damage you take. It gives you plenty of bullets and shotgun shells. And the melee weapons that you get are very effective at clobbering the few weak enemies there are a couple of times and they go down. So to me, it was obvious even before I got to the first Pyramid Head fight, that the combat in this game is not really hard. Why is that? This was billed to me. I was told to play this because it's a survival horror game, but surviving is easy. So why are the monsters here? And then as I got through the first apartment complex and as I discovered Pyramid Head, I realized, okay, this is all coming together now for me. All of these creatures and even the experience itself of beating them and shooting them is part of the narrative. It's
mm,
not meant to be challenging, except for the boss fights. They are meant to be kind of hard because they're important, so you want to make them stand out, I
yeah.
guess. But
Oh,
that,
that's
that
fair
that was
enough.
my feel on the combat.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I was very inexperienced when I played it, so let's fair enough. But when you talk about it being a thematic thing, let's also add some. Here's something I think the remake actually does really well. The way James finishes, especially when he does a headstand, there's something quite disturbing and upsetting about it. Like he's really kind of venting.
Yeah,
Like
and
he
it's
has
and
this
you don't feel
expression.
very victorious. Like in the new
No.
Blooper Team remake, I say blooper instead of blooper. In the Blooper Team remake, the combat, I don't know if this is intentional because of how they blooper things up, but because I've watched a total playthrough by now of the new thing. It's long. Oh, it's way too long. But anyway,
So long.
the one thing that I do think they captured well is making combat hard and not very satisfying.
Mm.
When James defeats these creatures and stomps them or beats the life out of them, you almost kind of don't like James, and he kind of gives you he gave me kind of a creepy feeling of this guy's kind of a violent murderer, and he's got a lot
Yes.
of pent up rage coming out when he stomps the life out of these things. It's
Yes.
it's not
Absolutely.
it's not like in a normal video game where you're like, oh yeah, I'm playing a hero, and wow, he beat up that bad guy, he killed a monster, I get some catharsis. With James, he doesn't dodge very well. The monsters are fast and hit you really hard. And when he finally
Mm.
gets one down and beats the life out of it, it's like there's almost no catharsis. It's like you're just seeing a man venting his endless rage and malcontent at having to do this killing over and over again, which is very thematic because
Absolutely.
that's what the
Yeah.
game is about.
So that was a nice point. Oh,
Yes.
also, we're gonna have to say it because just in case we didn't, someone is probably typing a comment. Uh, that first encounter with Pyramid Head, where you hide in a closet and shoot him, yes, Blue Velvet, direct reference. But that
Yes.
is so well known that we will. You don't need us to spend time on it. It's one
I'm
of many Lynch tributes.
Since I'm not intimately familiar with Twin Peaks or Jacob's Ladder, I like them
Mm,
both, and I haven't seen all of Twin Peaks, but I've seen enough to get it. Or I
mm,
mean, not really get it, but understand that it's a Lynch show. And I've seen Jacob's Ladder twice, but the last time I saw it was like 20 years ago. I can't tell you every reference, every direct reference, but I'm sure there's more than one. I just don't know them personally to
mm.
speak on. But I did see people in my research for this when I was digging through forums and Reddit threads and stuff. I saw people making a lot of direct references to Jacob's Ladder, Twin Peaks, that kind of thing.
Mm. Oh, absolutely. They're in there. They're in there. But all right. So it covered. Yes, you see Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head actually kind of helps you get the feeling like
Mhm.
this
So
is not a typical boss fight.
speaking of helping James,
Hmm.
later in Act Two, Pyramid Head chases James once he is escorting Maria around, and he doesn't kill James, even though he could. He chases both of them to an elevator, and he stabs Maria through the body and kills her outright with that big crazy knife of his, and then just looks at James and lets him go. And James,
Mm.
when Pyramid Head starts chasing him, a previously inaccessible elevator opens. So again, Pyramid Head shows up, kills Maria, and opens the way for James to progress. I find that very interesting, don't you?
Mm. Yes. So I suppose like we're fully in spoiler territory here.
Mm-hmm.
The idea, my understanding of Pyramid Head is largely he is an instrument of the town, but his role is personalized to James, and it's his need for punishment. It's
Mm-hmm.
shaped by his sexual frustration, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it is helping him and move through. So
Yes.
Maria is a born from a wish, you might say, and
We'll get to that later.
and she's got to be gone out of the way. She is a delusion. James went to this Toluca Lakeside town, on a wish to see his wife, thinking he could rekindle things and solve the mystery. But this was a fantasy. You know, Pyramid Head is Adam Curtising him through to catharsis. Apologies, that was terrible.
That's okay. We had fun talking about Pyramid Head and some gameplay. So now let's talk about what he represents.
Yes.
Like you just brought up, he represents punishment, but not punishment for a sadistic nature. He
Mm,
represents purposeful punishment to teach a lesson. That's what Pyramid Head represents. Later in
mm,
the game, at the very end of the game, with your final confrontation with two Pyramid Heads, there's two boogeymen. Uh, you fight them, and James says, "I realize what you are now. You exist to punish me. I get it." And I forget the exact dialogue, but he faces it and
mm,
owns up to it. So after the fight, when you defeat them, they kill themselves. They take spears and put it up under their big pyramid head helmets and presumably kill themselves by stabbing themselves up through the neck and just going limp on the spears that they kill themselves with. Why do they do
mm,
that? Because James took his punishment like a man. He faced reality and he understood the method. He followed Pyramid Head on every path Pyramid Head forced him down and through every door he opened. And right before the conflict, right before that final conflict, sort of in like a kind of Jesus Christ pose, they have Maria captured, the two pyramid heads, and they kill
mm,
her in front of James to make a point. It makes James suffer. He falls to his knees. That's when he gives the delivery. I realize it now. You exist to punish. I get it. I followed you here, etc. So then you have a boss fight because it's a video game and you have to have a boss fight. And then the pyramid heads kill themselves because that boogeyman for James in Silent Hill has served its purpose. James
mm.
learned the lesson. He took his lashes like a man, and he learned what he needed to learn from the punishment. So Pyramid Head kills itself because it's done. It served its purpose. What do you think about that? Do you think I'm right about that?
Oh, I'd go for that. I think, I mean, foregrounding, you know this game so much better than me. Um, my take was, I guess, up to that point, James is battling reality. He's in denial. He's then accepted it, and after that, the only remaining fight is basically what he has to do now that he accepts reality.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like, okay, I don't know. Uh, you avoid acknowledging an addiction. All right, then you admit you have an addiction. Right, then you battle the addiction.
Right.
Um,
And so the
Crude
thing he has to
analogy,
battle
but
is
that might be
confronting Mary slash Maria.
precisely. That's when he gets up to like the real issue. But until then, he's been denying it. Once
Yeah.
he gets past that, um, the pyramid heads don't need to be there because they've achieved their job. He's
Mm-hmm.
accepted it. Yeah.
And
So
one
I hope that
one
makes
of the
sense.
ways that you can learn, one of the ways you can learn Silent Hill either feeds off of or needs or has a desire to teach lessons to troubled people are the two other characters, Eddie and Angela, which we don't need to spend a
Mm,
lot of time on this because again, it would take another hour for to talk about all this. So let's not. But what I need to tell you about the two other characters that you interact with several times that get their own cutscenes that and James learns about their darknesses and what has drawn them here.
mm,
Through that, you, the player, along with James, learn that there are lessons to be learned here, And this weird dreamlike crucible, for whatever the reason is, we never know, it needs to pull people in that are troubled and have to face their darknesses and then either succumb to them or triumph over them. That is what
Mm.
this Silent Hill is doing. Silent Hill isn't this in any other game, but it is in this game. That's what Silent Hill seemingly is up to in this game. And so, you as the player, by this final confrontation point in the game, you already know that Maria is some kind of not real or simulacrum of Mary.
Mm.
And you know that she's tied to Silent Hill. And you know that she exists as part of your crucible. And you know that Eddie and Angela see different monsters and see a different Silent Hill than James sees. You also know from your final cutscene with Angela that you can visit the quote unquote other side of other people. So Silent Hill can let the people it pulls in see and experience the punishment and the crucible that it shares with others as a teaching tool. For
Mm.
example, where did Eddie go to hide out and where did he hide the body? In the meat locker, in the meat packing plant where they had the sides of beef freezing. So that's where your confrontation is with Eddie. Every time you see Eddie, he has food. He's around food. He's in a public place that serves food. And your confrontation, you find out his other side is cold. Why is that? Because everyone made fun of Eddie. He never had any friends. His parents didn't like him.
Mm.
He was abused at school. He was spit on, made fun of for being a fat dumbass. And so his experience is cold, frigid, alone. He can
Mm.
eat as much as he wants, but he'll never have friends and he'll never have catharsis. That's his darkness. And with Angela, it's sexual abuse and a burning house. Because when she finally fought back against her abusive father, she went too far and accidentally burned the house down and killed her mother.
Mm.
And who was the one person that she loved in the world who she wanted to protect. So that's all we need to say about Eddie and Angela. But what we learn from that as a player, and what James learns from that as a character, is that Silent Hill shows you different monsters and different hells that you need to either triumph over or be stuck in forever and become your own monster, your own boogeyman, your own
Yeah.
pyramid head. And so when James kills the pyramid heads, he shows himself, I have triumphed over your challenges. I am ready to move forward to the next thing. Or I have succumbed to this darkness and I am going to be my own boogeyman. But we know that's not the case because he beats the boogeyman. So that
Mm.
means the only thing left is James' resolution. He's ready to be free of what Silent Hill's hell has to show him, has to teach him. And that's where we get into the realm of the endings. Now,
Mm. Can I just ask
now
before we go further? I hope.
I was going to say there
Oh, please
are
go ahead.
probably things you have prepared to talk on, but before we get to my wrap up and resolutions and talking about the actual end game, I would love to humor anything you have to say or ask about the rest of the game.
Oh, you're a star. Yeah, I wanted to praise Angela. I love her storyline so much.
Oh, it's very good. It's very, very good.
Again, like that experience of I thought this is a video game. What's going on here with this really quite upsetting, disturbing
Hmm.
cutscene dealing with some very adult material? What is going on? I couldn't believe I was seeing it. Like a very mature story.
Hmm.
Like it was amazing to me. And then okay, maybe she's not the most subtle about the clues about what's happening because she doesn't want to be super explicit, but I still think it works. And I just found the resolution to her stuff really great. And she also gives us a clue about what you talked about, that you can encounter other people's
Hmm.
other sides, basically, because
Especially
you've
the
got.
line, especially the line at the very end of the
Mm.
final cutscene with Angela when she has her saccharine but also hostile, angry conversation with James, and he's
Mm.
like, "I got to get you out of here," because they're in a burning stairwell, like that's
Yes.
her hell, and she just looks at James and says, "It's always like this for me,"
Mm.
which
Uh,
means. So this is what she sees in Silent Hill all the time. Like I always see everything decrepit and peeling and wet and moldy and gross. She always sees everything burning and torturous
mm.
images of rape and sexualization everywhere. That's her hell. That's what she
Oh,
sees.
Yeah,
So
and
it's a very adult, mature moment, especially as like a young 20s person who hadn't really, delved into dark, real adult fiction before. Like it was a very we'll put it this way, it was a growing moment playing this game.
oh, certainly, yeah. And would you say it's quite key that she doesn't beat the boss? Like you beat her boss monster for her, and
Yes.
maybe that's why she never gets resolution.
Because she's a child. In her own mind,
Mm,
she's still a prisoner of the abuses of her childhood, and all she wants to do is escape, and the only way to do that is kill herself. And
yeah,
so she doesn't beat the Silent Hill boss, and she doesn't have the strength to become a boogeyman, so she kills herself. So that's
yeah.
what she does. So
Maybe
that's
it's
her
redundant.
resolution. Eddie becomes the monster, and you have to kill him because Eddie attacks you and wants to kill you because Eddie's a murderous psychopath. Or not,
Mm,
I don't want to say psychopath, a murderous sociopath. He
yeah,
probably isn't a psychopath. He's just
he,
a low IQ simpleton that was driven and taught by abuse, pain, and violence. So that's what he became.
that's very fair. Like I notice on Eddie, he basically wears children's clothes.
Yes.
Like
So, and you
he
get that
looks
from
like
Angela as well, that she's sort of stunted in her development.
yeah, stunted, and she's covering herself up totally because she doesn't want anyone looking at her.
Yeah,
Great
she
details, but
she's frumpy on purpose. She doesn't want you to sexualize her.
yeah,
A nice a visual
great
stark
detail.
contrast to Maria, by the way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's very important stuff. And let's say if we're talking like the crudest simplifications, basically throughout Silent Hill, you're battling your own demons.
Yes, very much
But
so.
Angela never finished that fight because she didn't defeat the abstract daddy boss, which is her monster.
Hmm.
Um, and the symbology, if you get a chance to, we'll get it on screen, but this what that symbolizes with the large figure over the little figure under some sheets.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm glad that they didn't get explicit and have anyone spell it out in clear words because the
Me too.
imagery is enough, and
The
it's
imagery is perfect because it doesn't insult your intelligence as a viewer.
mm,
And for more wholesome, simple minded people that play it, they're just going to think she's a troubled youth or whatever and has problems, and maybe she burned down her parents' house because she's mad at
yeah,
her daddy. They're not going to get the severely dark, horrible implications that more clever, mature people will get. And I think that
yeah,
that works well for the medium.
yeah, yeah. So just saying those stories handled brilliantly. I'd also never considered that Eddie is in the cold all the time.
Really?
Once
That never occurred to you?
no,
Oh, okay.
I'm. You will be astonished for all the reaches I do. Years, you will be astonished at the really obvious stuff that I just miss.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
again, that's my interpretation. I didn't read this from a blog or a Reddit. Like my interpretation of Eddie is when you meet him and see him, he's alone. He's eating. He's always in a public place where people are supposed to have fun, but he looks miserable, and that's his
mm,
whole life. School, the playground, people teasing him, kicking him, spitting on him, telling him he's fat and stupid.
mm.
Stealing his lunch money, shoving him over, telling him he's a fat good for nothing, and then
Laura believes him.
and even Laura bullies him, and she's 8, and
Yeah,
they seem like peers on a maturity level. The way that their interaction happens, which leads
uh,
you to think, yeah, Eddie probably is a low IQ, never developed past like 8th grade or 10th grade. Like he is, unfortunately for him, a fat, ugly simpleton, and People kicked him and spit on him his whole life for being a fat simpleton, and unfortunately, he turned to violence because that's all he was ever shown. He wasn't shown good parenting. He wasn't shown love. He was never accepted. He always felt cold and othered. And every scene that you have with Eddie, he's in a place where people should be gathering and having fun, but he always looks miserable and he's sitting in a corner. And when
mm,
you're pulled into his hell, it's cold, it's frigid, it's dark.
mm,
Even the food you can't eat because it's frozen. So that's Eddie's hell.
mm. Oh, yeah, it's a great analysis. Yeah, as you
That's why
say,
you have me on, PH.
well, of course, yeah. He's had it so rough, and the dialogue makes it clear. When he actually uses violence, suddenly he has control.
Hmm.
Suddenly he's the one who isn't the victim. So,
Yeah,
like, of course he turns to it. Eddie probably could have been helped, but
right.
he wasn't, and this is why
Yeah.
he was called. Yeah, so it's
Eddie
great.
is a good example of societal neglect and impersonal abuse. Where Angela is a good example of societal isolation and personal abuse.
Mm,
They are each examples of how people can be tormented and alone in modern society.
yeah. Would you think, given the way James's Otherworld looks, wet, mouldy, dirty, like
Decrepit, yeah.
decrepit, I get a kind of disease reading from that.
Yes, yes.
It's
That
so
I believe
different to
that's
your.
intentional from what I've read about the art design. Is they wanted James's other side and James's regular Silent Hill experience to give off this dilapidated, forgotten, weakened, sort of diseased state. Where because when we see later with the final goodbye to Maria, when she's laying dead on the bed with lesions and ugly warped skin, we are
Mm,
to understand that some type of horrible disease befell Maria that made her gross and stinky and disgusting to look at. Like I don't know
mm,
what that would be. Lesions, maybe come from some type of bone cancer or something that you can't do anything about.
yeah.
And when Maria is dying from the same thing that killed Mary, when my first time playing through it, I realized, oh, so that might be why James is seeing everything in his other side as like ran down and miserable and decaying and decrepit and falling apart and dilapidated. Is that's thematically showing his hell because he had to
Mm,
watch his beautiful, fertile, hot young wife decay before his eyes in a very short period of time, and that
mm,
scarred him permanently. So that might be why his hell looks like this.
yeah. Can I ask you about Maria? Um, she does kind of flip. She's not consistent, as you said. Sometimes she's acting like she's Mary, and then goes back, and she can be sweet and like quite sexually aggressive, and then
Mhm.
she can be hostile. I was wondering why you think she acts like that. 'Cause I had a couple of ideas, but I
Okay.
wondered if you had a take on why she is like that.
I think that the duality, again, I think it's because she represents what James really wants, and James
Mm,
wants two things that are mutually exclusive. The immature self of James wants what Mary was, what Maria is: beautiful, confident, strong, healthy,
mm,
sexy, fit, probably fertile, probably good for
mm,
impregnating and raising a child, which is something both him and Mary wanted before she got sick.
mm,
The mature self of James only wants the real Mary. And the real Mary, as we learn in the final moments of the game, started to lose herself in the end. She would lash out at James. She hated herself. She hated how unfair it was. Her life was stolen in the prime of her life. She was bitter, angry, resentful, chastised James and yelled at him.
mm.
And that part of Maria, Silent Hill made Maria from James's mind and soul. So that part is also in Maria because that part is real in James's mind. So when that part comes out, that is the bedridden at the end of her days, bitter, angry, it's unfair, why me part of Mary. That is real in James's mind. So that manifests and comes out of Maria.
Okay, yeah, that works for me.
I mean, again, I didn't
I'm not
read
trying
this.
to
This
be
is not like
brusque, like
canonical. This is just my interpretation of it because I've spent so much time with the material. That's what I think it's supposed to be.
no, that's cool. I get that. I like the reading of as she's kind of a projection. If he is internally conflicted, then she will be conflicted and
Yes,
express that.
correct. That is
Um,
correct.
I'd wondered if there's one where she is okay. She's his projection, but basically the town is kind of operating her. So the town sort of
Uh,
shows
yes
its
and
true
no.
space.
Yes and no. And I'm
Mm.
going to say this because I have future knowledge of the re-release, the HD remaster, and 15 years of
Okay.
conjecture on it, and many interviews with the creators. Mary is a storytelling device from Team Silent. Mary shows you there is duality here and that there are different outcomes based on James' desires. She's a storytelling
Mm.
device for a video game, not just a character in a movie. So the three main endings, which we will get to here in a few minutes because we're running out of time, but Maria can manifest as a challenge to overcome and be discarded when she's done. Pyramid Head understands this. He is a tool of Silent Hill, just like Maria is a tool of Silent Hill. He
Mm.
understands there's a time for him to die. There's a time for him to give up. There's a time for him to attack. There's a time for him to open a door for you. And Maria is the same kind of creation of Silent Hill. She was created for James to be his challenge. Or if James decides to accept Silent Hill and stay here permanently, she is his new partner. Silent Hill created Maria as sort of a flux device where you defeat her, overcome her, and discard her if James is going to triumph and make a decision in reality. You embrace her if James decides to give in to his darknesses, learn very little, and just live in his misery like Angela did, like Eddie did. So Maria is the Schrodinger's hooker. She can be a wholesome waifu if you face reality and know that hookers are bad, and then magically she becomes not a hooker. And if you embrace the darkness and the low mind, you're like, yay, hot young hooker! I'm going to stay here in Silent Hill with my hot young hooker. Like, so she is very much Schrodinger's hooker.
Nice. Okay, I may have been wrong about an interpretation for years. Then,
Oh well, tell
I
me
have
about
to.
it, and I'll say if I agree or not. Go ahead.
I mean, yeah, this could be my own sort of crack theory, but I was thinking I've always been a fan of the Rebirth ending.
That's not canonical though. That's not part of the original game. That was added in later.
Okay, I'm instantly in
That,
crack theory territory then. But the
I'm
way.
I'm familiar with it, know all about it. I'm glad to talk about
Oh,
it, but
okay.
that's not the part of the original game. The original game had three endings: in water, leave, and what's the other one? Oh, it's just called Maria. That's why I can't remember. It's just called
Mm,
Maria. The original three endings were in water, leave, and Maria, and they represent the quote unquote good ending, if there really even is one, is leave. James
mm,
is completely honest with himself and with Laura and said, because I wanted free of the miserable of being miserable and she wanted the pain to end, I killed her and smothered her to death with a pillow. It was the right
mm,
thing to do for her and the right thing to do for me. I did a bad thing, but I did it for good reasons. One
mm,
selfish, one altruistic. That's what I did, Laura, and I have to leave my darkness behind because she wanted to adopt you and you to be my daughter. Silent Hill brought you here to me for me to face this crucible. And if I face the truth and accept my darkness and own up like a man and take responsibility for my deeds, then I will be free of this hell. Let's leave here together. And so
mm,
the quote unquote good ending is Laura leaves with James, and presumably they go off to live somewhere else. Now,
mm.
canonically, if you've played all the other games, I don't think that's the canon ending because every other game where James comes up, he went missing in Silent Hill and never was seen again. So,
Yeah.
so that leads me to believe that the ending I got first is the ending that is the canonical ending in my head canon. I
Mm,
got In Water first, which people now that I've read about it, apparently In Water is a very difficult ending to get because apparently most players are not like me. I'm a slow moving completionist. I look in every
mm,
room. I check every door. I make sure every lock is broken because lock is broken every time you play Silent Hill. I go and find everything. I look at all the flavor text. I read every dialogue or every document. I look for all the lore. I look at all the stuff in my inventory. And apparently that's how you get the ending. So let's talk about the endings real quick. One of the ways that this game really screws with you as a player,
mm,
you might think to yourself, how do I get the different endings? Well, you don't even know. Nothing tells you. The instruction manual doesn't tell you. You like back in the day, you would have to have the strategy guide. You would have to go spend your $20 or whatever to buy the strategy guide from Software Etc. or Babbage's or whatever to actually know how the hell you're supposed to get the different endings. Or you just play through it different ways a bunch of times. So here it is. If you want to get the good ending, you have to distance yourself from Maria. You have to not check in on her on the couple of chances you have to check in on her after the dialogue ends. You have to either stay away from her by running away from her a lot or bumping into her a bunch. And here's the weird thing: at least a certain number of times in the game, which is quite a lot, you have to heal James with a healing item in a short window of time after taking damage.
Mm.
That's how you
Showing
get
that you care about James' health.
showing that you care about James and he
Mm.
wants to live, that he's not suicidal. Also, when you take the bloody knife from Angela on your second meeting with Angela, she's laying in the floor suicidal with the knife like she's going to slit her wrist. James talks her
Mm.
out of it and takes the knife. There's more to it, but we'll skip it. And you keep that knife in your inventory the rest of the game. If you look at that knife at least once, I'm pretty sure it locks you out of the James lives with Laura ending, I think. You might get a
Yes.
gimme. It might be twice.
I,
But
I checked it out constantly because I thought it was going to be useful as a clue. And
I
so
thought
I
it
was
might be a
always
weapon or a
looking
tool
at
too,
it.
so I looked at it a bunch as well.
And then you get in water.
Right. So to
Yeah.
get the in water ending, there's one particular lore note you have to read about suicide. I think it's on top of the hospital or on top of the apartments. I forget exactly where. You have to be interested in hoarding your items, meaning you don't constantly use up all your healing items as you get them. You save them for a rainy day. So James walks around with a little bit of damage because you bump into stuff. You might get bitten on the foot by a roach when you don't notice it. Sometimes you take damage in certain cutscenes or whatever. And you're not always going to be at full health. And if you've ever played games like I play games, you always hoard your resources until you need them for sure. And so
Yes.
that's just how I play. And also, I love lore and setting and reading
Mm.
about and digging my teeth into the setting. So, of course, I looked at all the lore notes. Of course, I took my time. Of course, I made sure Maria could keep up with me because occasionally she has things to say and I didn't want to miss out on them. So, I wasn't constantly running away from Maria. So, the in water ending, I think, is what most of us OG, real point and click adventure, real horror fans, that's the ending that we get. So that's my canonical ending for
Mm.
James. Now, before I tell you what that ending is, let's talk about the other ending. Let's talk about the Maria ending. Do you know how you get the Maria ending?
No, I assume you've got to check on her a lot
You
and
have to
stick
check on
close to
her
her.
every time that there's an option to check on her when you don't have to progress. You have to check on her. You
Mm.
also have to not bump into her more than I forget the number. You have to not bump into her by sprinting into her, which shows you care about her and you
Mm.
don't want to bump her around. You have to never shoot or hit her with the weapon. And then I think there's something else too. You have to look at a certain thing or not look at a certain thing. I forget. And I don't remember if you have to not look. Oh, by the way, James starts with a picture of his dead wife in his inventory,
Mm.
as well as the letter from his dead wife, which we'll get to what that actually is here soon. You have to not interact with those in your library or in your inventory, and you have to constantly interact with Maria at every opportunity, and you have to keep her from taking damage, and you have to be
Mm.
interested in her. And of course, at the very end, whether you listen to all of or only the first segment before there's a fake out. At the very end of the game, before you face the Maria Mary monster at the end, which we don't even need to talk about, it's just video game stuff. It doesn't even
Mm.
matter for this discussion. James walks through a very long, straight hallway and hears a voiceover by Mary, excuse me, his dead wife.
Mm.
And she's mad at James. She's bitchy. She's venting vitriol because of the darkness of her horrible situation and how she's so angry at life and fate, and she's lashing out at James to chase him away because she's become hideous and she hates herself. But, but, if you walk at a normal pace or jog during that long hallway, you get to the end right as there's a long pause where you think, as a first time player, that voiceover is done. But if you wait 4 whole seconds, the voice picks up again. Did you know that?
No, no,
And
that's
she
new.
and she apologizes and talks sweet to James and says she's sorry and only wants what's best for him and she'll love him forever. Now, that's a checkpoint to get an ending. If you get the water ending or the Maria ending if you leave before that last part of that. And most players don't even know there's going to be a second part. So almost nobody gets the leave ending where James faces up to everything and leaves with Laura and presumably goes on to have a good life. Most players don't even know to hang around and just stand there for 5 seconds before they open the door. Why would they think that? Because the dialogue ends and it sounds like it's final, and then you listen for 3 or 4 seconds and nothing happens, so you just click on the door and open it. Because no matter what, even if you walk, you don't get to the door before the end of the first part of that voiceover. You have to
Mm.
go out of your way to wait and listen and make sure Mary's done talking. And that's the only way to get, I think, the leave ending, the quote unquote good ending. is to know that Mary really does love you, and despite being hostile to you and caustic to you, she was only chasing you away because she loved you and wanted you to move on from her
Mm.
and go live a life worth living and give up on her, because no matter what you do, she's going to get ugly and die in a few days. So there you go. So anyway, I just thought that was worth mentioning because a lot of people don't even know that. I just thought
No,
that was interesting.
totally was. I mean, to spell it out for people, like this was such a revelation. Like a game where literally your behavior matters.
Yes,
Like
it's
I feel a
bizarre.
lot of games would just you just get a dialogue option, which
Right.
is kind of behavior, but this is much more subtle because you could like how can I say you could behave one way all the way through a game, but then if you just choose one dialogue option, it
Or if during combat you accidentally
um,
hit Maria or bump into her while you're running around looking and just exploring the
yeah.
map, like maybe you lock yourself out of that ending and you don't know. Also, as a
Mm.
player, maybe you look at that picture of Mary and you read the note at the beginning of the game. Why would I ever think to look at it again? I know what she looks like. I read the letter. Maybe I'll read it again at one point, but like you have to look, you have to engage. I forget the number of times, but it's more than 3. Like to get the in water ending, or to get the in water ending, I think you have to engage with the letter and the note and be pining for Mary to show that
Mm.
that you slash James doesn't want to let go of the past. You want Mary of old to be. You can't let it go. You can't move on. And I think at least 3 times or 4 times you have to engage with the Mary photo in your inventory to get the in water ending. Now,
Mm.
we've told you what the endings are. What do they entail? Well, the Mary one is interesting. Or I'm sorry, Maria. We'll talk about Maria first.
Hmm.
That's not the one I got first. The one that I got first, I think, is the best ending. We'll talk about that later.
Yes, in Water Gang, every
Yeah,
time.
in Water Gang for sure, because that feels like if I was writing a story and I was writing a Jacob's Ladder, David Lynch horror story, I would end it the in Water way. But I
Mm.
digress.
Can I
The
pause you
way that
quickly, Yizz, if that's
go
all
ahead,
right?
sure, sure.
I think I was searching for the best description about why in this game it's so much better than just like a dialogue option to size. I think it's revealed preference versus stated preference. Like you could
Yeah.
just arbitrarily choose a dialogue option at one point, whereas in
Well,
Real 2, it's how you act throughout the whole game, and that's
yes,
why
and
it's so much more meaningful. I
since you
just
brought it up, I will back you up by saying this: revealed preference over stated preference. The reason why I think there are no dialogue, like in this whole game, you never choose a dialogue option. You never choose an action James takes. You are only there to fight combats and to do the inputs to solve puzzles. You do nothing else as a player other than maneuver him around the world that he has to go through anyway. That's it.
mm,
So, why is there no choice like that? Because it would cheapen the narrative and be actually counter narrative to the story itself. And why is that, Miss PH? Because everyone that you can talk to in the game is a liar.
mm,
They tell you what they think you want to hear at first, and it is revealed to you that they were not telling you the whole truth or were outright lying because of their own fears or their own designs. Eddie does it. To her own
mm,
degree, Laura does it. Maria certainly does it because she can't help it.
mm,
Uh, Mary does it. She doesn't really hate James. She wants to run James away because she loves him, and she can see how it hurts him to see her withered and nasty.
mm,
And of course, Angela lies because, well, she doesn't want James to get close to her because she's afraid men are going to rape her because she's an abuse victim.
mm,
So it is shown to us you can't trust what people say. So why would giving us an option to have James say, I love Mary instead of Maria? That would ring just as hollow as the lies that everyone in the narrative says. Our
absolutely.
actions are what shows the truth. Our journey is what reveals the truth, not simply stating something that we wish was. Because
Yes.
James wishes Mary was alive and never got sick.
Mm,
Angela wishes her horrible father never abused her. Eddie wishes people didn't treat him like shit. And Laura wishes she wasn't an orphan. Everyone has wishes that are revealed to us through actions and their journey, not what they say. You don't know anything about these characters because of what they say on the surface when you first get to know them. It's all fake.
mm.
It's all stated preference, which we know is not true. The revealed preference for every single character in this game is what's true, not the stated one.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you've Yeah, you summed that up brilliantly. Well done.
Well, thank you. Like I
Yes.
said, you had me on for a reason. So, let's now talk about. I'm sorry. Let me finish the Maria ending then.
Please, yes.
The Maria ending is. We talked about the how unique this game is for determining the endings with the seemingly innocuous player inputs and player stuff. But anyway, in the Maria ending, after the dialogue with the final confrontation of the boss and the wording of the final words is different, but it's mostly the same for all three endings. But then you get different visuals, a different setting, and different actions in the final cutscene. And in the final scene, while the credits are rolling or the letter is ending, I forget which exactly one it is. In the Maria ending, James learns nothing basically, and even though he faced his darknesses and fesses up to, I killed my wife because of reasons, but I don't care. I want what feels good. I want Maria.
He wants that
Him and
silent
Maria,
hussy.
that he wants that silent Hilissy. Uh, so he wants Schrodinger's hooker.
Mm.
He wants that to be his new waifu, and so it shows them. This is the only ending, by the way, that shows where you started the game. The only ending you
Mm.
can get, even with the added new ones, that shows the start of the game, James's car by the little public bathroom at the beginning of the park, where you first get to the outskirts of Silent Hill. The
Mm.
Maria ending shows that, and he and Maria are walking to the car, and she coughs into her hand like she is getting sick. She's got that anime death cough, that death sentence anime cough.
Yeah,
And James says, "Well, we better do something about that cough of yours." As they're walking back to his car, that
absolutely.
shows you he is now a prisoner of his own mind, his own failures in Silent Hill. The cycle is starting again,
Yeah.
and now he is a creature of Silent Hill. He failed his test. He took what was easy, shallow, and lustful. He wants what he can't have, and he didn't learn and grow from his crucible. So now he is part of Silent Hill, and now he will be here as a permanent resident like Angela and Pyramid Head.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Doomed to repeat, has not learned.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats, you learned nothing. It's
Sort of like
it's a
Angela,
perfect ending.
you faced the darkness and failed, as where Angela could never muster the strength to kill her own demon.
Mm.
James didn't kill his own demon because his demon was a Pyramid Head. His demon was Maria all along. He embraced his demon.
Yes, yes.
So that's the
It's
Maria ending.
such a good ending. I mean, just the way it expresses itself is excellent. Even if you
Yes.
you may not get it, but if you do get it, this is what you deserve.
Yes, yes. And in my opinion, the least interesting is the quote unquote good ending, where James mans up, faces a darkness, is completely honest about it with Laura. Him and Laura leave, presumably to go have a decent life somewhere. It shows them walking through the graveyard in a symbol of laying the dead to rest and moving on and finishing your grieving and your mourning. Because by the time you go back to a graveyard that you've been to before to see a dead loved one, your grieving and mourning has finished. It's long in your past. And when you go to an old graveyard with an old tombstone of someone that you used to love, you've clearly moved on. You've
Mm.
moved on. And that's why they use that as the symbolism there. But I think this is the least interesting ending. James is not a heroic character. James is a tragic character.
Mm.
James doesn't really man up or do anything heroic at all in the game other than realizing he has repressed memories and facing them. That's it. Like, he doesn't really have much of a heroic arc. He is a troubled everyman character. He's not a hero. He's not a John Wick. He's not
Mm.
a Kyle Reese. He's not a hero. He's not there to sacrifice himself for others. He is there because James cares about James.
Mm.
And James is a normal guy with heavy problems. And that's it. And that's why I think that the quote unquote good ending, the leave ending, is the least sensible and the least interesting of all the endings. What do you think?
I think, yeah, because okay, I'm trying to find the wording, but effectively, James's punishment is extremely brutal and kind of disproportionate. As you said, he doesn't kill. Well, the really interesting thing is, it's not he grows a mustache and twirls it. It's like I offed her because I fancied some new bit of crumpet. It
Right. Like that
no,
that's never even part of the narrative at all. Like that doesn't come
exactly.
up.
he's brutalizing himself.
Yes.
It's so much is his own guilt and torment, and it's okay. Can he fully get over that and just all be good and then get out of there? It could work, but it's a hard sell. It's a very hard sell.
Yeah.
And I
Just to
much
back him
prefer
up.
the tragic aspect. I mean, you started with Shakespeare,
Hmm.
and when Shakespeare writes a tragedy, it's that someone has a key flaw, and they
Hmm.
don't really get to remove that. And
And
James's guilt.
James's flaw is he can't let it go, and he hates himself for it.
Mm,
Like
absolutely.
he's riddled by guilt and indecision, like a lot of regular people.
Mm.
So
So yeah,
he
letting him get over that is
he is a tragic character like from Shakespeare. He's not a hero. He's not a heroic character like from modern fiction. That's
mm,
the wrong way to look at James.
yeah,
And to back up what you were saying there about him not being like a sadistic guy or not being like an actual villain, uh, when you watch the videotape, again, this is just gameplay stuff. Like it's not really what James learns at the hotel is they took a videotape the weekend or the week that they discovered Mary was sick. The last good memory or whatever that they had
mm,
before Mary died. Mary got sick 3 years ago. She found out she had a terminal illness 3 years ago. She didn't die till recently. And we'll get to
mm,
that for the final ending, but bear with me. James finds the videotape from 3 years ago when, quote unquote, she died to him in his mind.
mm,
And in the videotape, at the very end, she coughs a little bit. She's like, "Oh, I might have the anime death sickness." Um, and then the videotape stops being from James' point of view of holding the old VHS camcorder. It cuts to into a weird angle showing James and like through static and VHS tracking issues. We see James hold his dying wife's hand, kiss her on the head. She holds his hand, and then he slowly and with confidence and not in a jerky manner, he takes her pillow and puts it over her face and leans on it, and she doesn't fight back.
mm,
That shows us that James killed her, but she accepted it and she didn't fight it.
mm,
So that alone shows us, I think, visually, that the trauma he has isn't from killing his wife who kicks and screams. It's from doing what she wanted. She wanted to be put out of her misery, and the selfish, sexual, I want to be a man and have a wife and impregnate her and make children and be a man part of himself wanted free of that baggage, wanted her to die so he could move on and do what his impulses drove him to do, which were good impulses, by the way, healthy impulses.
mm,
That's where the trauma is. That's where the tragedy is. A man should find women sexy. A young man should want to mate with a woman and impregnate her and have children. He should want a sexy woman he can make a mother. Those are
mm,
healthy impulses, but they led him to kill his wife. So this is really heavy, mature stuff. This is very emotional, moral gray area stuff here.
mm.
And so that shows us that James is not meant to be taken as a sadistic monster or a flippant killer. He is not supposed to be taken that way at all.
No, and what we see in that is, as well as just like an amazing Lost Highway tribute in the finding of the tape,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also a great metaphor for how he's thinking. Like literally, these are his nice memories. They
Yeah.
have been written over with tragedy. He can't have the good memories because they've been written over.
Yeah, it's like when you're a kid and you find out that your mom taped over cartoons with some stupid crap from TV or some boring show that her and her friends wanted to watch.
Mm. Yeah, good. It's just, I mean, VHS flashbacks,
I
Zoomers, they
know.
don't get it. For Zoomers, VHS was no, we won't do it. We won't do it. But, yeah, I mean, It works for people of our age. We remember the VHSs, but just yes, the
Hmm.
metaphor for how he can't have good memories anymore. He's not
Yeah,
allowed because this so dominates his
the trauma
thoughts.
and the darkness and the loss, it robs him of his ability to even remember and live in the good parts of Mary and the good experiences he had.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Which
Um,
leads me to the best ending. Shall we get started?
oh heck yes.
Okay. So, the ending that I got, as prefaced before all of this last 20 or 30 minutes of talking about the endings, is called In Water. Now, the game starts off with James looking at himself in the mirror. He touches himself to see if it's real. He goes out to his car. The door is open. He looks in the front seat, but not the back seat or any other part of the car.
Mm.
He goes to find Mary. He's got the picture and the letter with him. Where did the letter come from? He never says, does he? It's never said. But he
Nope.
starts the game with the letter. At the end of the game, you find out she hasn't been dead for 3 years. But the good Mary, his life, the wife he wanted, has been dead for 3 years. That's where he marks the end of his life and wife, was with her getting terminally ill 3 years ago. Then the last 3 years has been a personal hell, a living hell of trying to escape this hell so he can move on with his life, but he loves and is devoted to his wife, but she's not his wife anymore. Trauma, trauma, trauma.
Mm.
The letter he starts with because she just gave it to him. James's dead wife is in the car, either in the back seat or in the trunk. He
Oh, I
just
can
killed her a day
confirm.
or so ago.
I can
She's with
confirm
him in
she's
the
in the
car.
back seat. I saw an interview about this.
Oh, I
They
know.
were.
I have two.
Oh,
It's in my notes.
apologies.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, no, it's just from the clarification. I think the Japanese creator was like really specific. Like, oh no, he would put her
Yes.
in the back seat because it's more respectful.
Respectful, and specifically because not only did he respect the body, but as we get to in a moment, there is a Japanese suicide trope of why she would be in the car, not in the
Mm,
seat, and not in the trunk. But we'll get to that.
that's
So,
it. That's it.
he has the letter because the nurse gave it to him. In the ending of the game, Mary, the voice actor for Mary, reads a really long, saccharine, sad, tear-jerking letter, a death letter to James. It's the last thing she wrote to James, and she gives it to a nurse to give to him when she dies. And in that letter, they decide to let her out of hospice care at the whatever hospital she was in to go home one last time because she's about to die. And they thought she might want to go die at home with her husband. And that's where James smothers her.
Mm,
And so she has the letter with her, and that's why he has it, is because he apparently was looking through her stuff when he killed her, or after he killed her, or whatever. Or she told him, "Here, James, when I'm gone, this is for you." And so maybe she was going to live there at home for a month, for 2 months, and neither she nor James wanted that. So whenever she got there, she just wanted to be put out of her misery, and James acquiesced. And when he opened the letter after smothering the life out of his wife, she said her greatest memories were that beautiful vacation they took at Silent Hill. And she will always be waiting there for him. She means it spiritually. She
mm,
means it emotionally. But in his broken state, because he killed his wife, he has a break. He has a mental, emotional break. And that is what Silent Hill exploited to pull him in. I don't think Silent Hill wants him to leave. Silent Hill needs Angela's and Eddie's. It
mm,
needs James's. And so it brought him there. It already knew him. It already knew the love they had, and it's going to exploit that to trap him in Silent Hill. And so what happens? The in-water ending is what you get by what I outlined earlier. In the in-water ending, we don't get a visual of Maria and James walking to the car. We don't get a visual of Laura and James saying their goodbye to Silent Hill as they walk the opposite way through the graveyard, the first place that he finds in Silent Hill after going through the woods and where he meets Angela the first time. They're leaving the graveyard on the way back to James's car, presumably to leave Silent Hill and go live happily ever after, or at least have a good go at life. No. In the in-water ending, all you get is a single picture, and it looks like you're looking up in a very deep body of water at a barely lit surface of
mm.
water. And what do we hear? We hear two car doors. We hear a slam. We hear the car speed off. We hear a crash and a splash. Toluca Lake is the lake that you drive over on the overpass on the way into Silent Hill, that the way a tourist would come to visit. The tourist spot hotel overlooks the lake. James can see the lake where you first start the game. You can see past over the woods into the lake. James puts his wife. He sits her up in the car, the corpse of his wife, and he drives off the bridge into the lake, and he drowns. And this is why she is not in the trunk at the end. She is in the seat, because the Japanese director guy, or someone in the team, I forget who said it. It is a Japanese suicide pact thing where you and your loved one who is either already dead or you both want to die, you drive your car off a bridge into a body of water and you drown together. That's like
Mm.
a saccharine, dark suicide pact type of thing. So that is the in water ending. So, what do you think about that? Let's talk
Best
about it.
ending.
Best ending by far. If I wrote it, that would be the ending that I would choose.
Also massively suits something that maybe doesn't translate for Americans, but is a key part of Japanese horror, is that water is extremely spiritual and
Yes.
will be a symbol of that. So watch out for this, folks. You know, The Ring, ghost comes
Mm-hmm.
out of a watery well and drips
Mm-hmm.
water. Dark Places, same director, all
And in
about
lots of
water.
Japanese video games that have horror or spooky
Mm,
elements, it will be creatures that come from water, creatures
mm.
that can exist only in water, and when they leave the water, they become mist or they infect your mind or something.
Oh,
You
yes.
will often find spiritual truths hidden
Mm.
in like secret, out of the way wells or at the bottom of the sea or something like that.
Yeah, and so like bringing that in, the fact that he's in Toluca Lake, it's got that added level of this is kind of like a mystical victory, like
Yes,
the mystic forces of Silent Hill.
have
They've
claimed
got him.
James,
Yeah, they've got him.
and so now whenever James manifests in Silent Hill, maybe like Jason Voorhees. You have to find out the answer from his bones in the bottom of the lake in the old car.
Oh
But
goodness.
no, to me, I feel like this is the best written and most appropriate ending for the dream experience that we have with James. He clearly was broken by what happened. So much so, he forgot his wife didn't actually die 3 years ago. So much so, he doesn't remember or know how he got this letter. So much so that he almost believes Maria can be real. And I
Mm,
think that's why the in water ending is by far the most appropriate for James. I think Silent Hill pulled James here because Silent Hill knew he was an easy sell.
mm. Yeah, just because he learns the truth doesn't mean he can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they're two totally separate things. Doesn't mean he can overcome it.
Right.
It means he might sort of go back to what he planned.
And
Yeah.
who is the boogeyman? Who is Pyramid Head? An agent, a demon, an angel of Silent Hill. It was doing Silent Hill's bidding to guide James along his way and make him face the truth so it would permanently break him and make him kill himself. So the spirit could be harvested to fuel Silent Hill. Silent Hill wanted James in the way it wants things, which is spiritually and totally.
Absolutely. So,
So to me, that's why In Water is the canonical ending.
and same, and not just because it's the one that I got consistently.
Is that the one you
um,
got too? Because that's the first one I got.
yep. Like you. I was checking every item. As I said,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, have I missed something? I checked the photo again, check the knife, um, all that business. But so this is made. I mean, you might not want to spend long on this because, as you said, it's not a canonical ending. But the way we understand In Water really informs how I think of the Rebirth ending, which is
Mm-hmm.
one I really quite like getting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
When
It's interesting. I like it too. The reason why I like it the most is for those of you who know about Silent Hill, Silent Hill 2 is a standalone thing. Almost all of the other Silent Hill games, actually every one except Shattered Memories I can think of. Shattered Memories, again, is a standalone thing, which is awesome, and I like Shattered Memories, but it's not like
Mm,
Silent Hill. Anyway, all of the other Silent Hill games, 1, 3, 4, Origins, Homecoming, I don't know about Downpour because I've never played Downpour.
same.
But all of the other Silent Hill main properties, they deal with there is some weird cult that worships like a Lovecraft pagan cult type of thing that is called the old god or the new god or whatever Alessa is supposed to be reborn into. There is the great demon that like wants to usher in this god or whatever. That's the demon thing that Travis fights in Origins and that Harry faces off against in the original Silent Hill #1. Everything about Silent Hill has to do with like Lovecraft cult stuff and demons and gods and weird stuff and mind control and weird potions that can make people mind slaves and like very magical, mystical, typical like Lovecraft horror occult stuff, right? All the other Silent Hill games are about that. Silent Hill 2 is not about that at all. That's not even in it. So, this is why in the it was the I think the Xbox version came out in like 2002 or 3,
Hmm.
and then the remake, like what was it billed as? Give me a second, I'll look it up. I'll tell you where that's from.
Yeah,
Let me open up the wiki here. Silent Hill.
while you're doing that, I'll just point it. I'll
Yes.
just say for people, if you're wondering, like, what behaviors do you do for this, or it's really simple. You need to read a book and you need to find a few items. That's it. That if you do those, you get the rebirth ending. So it's very logical, and it can kind of override the others.
Yeah. Let me scroll down here. It'll tell me. Where is the rebirth ending? Yeah, it originally came out for the Xbox version, the one that added in Born from a Wish, because Born from a Wish wasn't in the original game either.
Mm.
So the Xbox, the original, I don't think it was the one that came out for Xbox One or 360. Which would 360 come out before Xbox One? I don't remember. Was it
Oh,
360? Yeah,
I
360
wouldn't
was.
know. I played it on an
But
original Xbox.
yeah, so you got the Xbox release that had Born from a Wish and the Rebirth ending. Those were not in the original. And Rebirth is sweet. It's cool.
Mm. Yeah, it sort of appealed to me. I mean, I like a lot of them. In Water, I think is the best one, but Rebirth has a sort of appeal because I sort of view it as an extension of the idea of basically the town tricks James into doing something like, oh yeah, I'll
Yes.
totally bring your wife back, bro, but
Right.
it's tricked him into doing a ritual that serves like the original Silent Hill cult
Yes.
or gods.
And
I love
and
that.
I will say this. As a lover and appreciator of Silent Hill 1 and 3, which I think are the best games. Silent Hill 2 is the best for reasons you and I love it, but
Mm,
we aren't really into video games the way other people are into video games.
no.
So I like video games a lot, but I'm not like, an OG console gamer or whatever. Like I'm not like, oh yeah, Resident Evil, I want the remake, and oh, I've played the original Resident Evils a million times. I'm not like that. But or Silent Hill 1 and 3 are very good and perhaps arguably the best ever survival horror video games. They play like video games. There's a spooky story. You fight a bunch of
Mhm.
monsters. It's about witchcraft and occultism and Lovecraft gods and demons and shit that we can't possibly understand that breaks our minds and all kinds of weird crap like that. So it's like it's more like a video game. Silent Hill 2 is not like that at all. Now, I will say this, as an appreciator of all that, if today I was to recommend to someone Silent Hill 2 and they had not played Silent Hill 2, but they were familiar with Silent Hill 1 at least, or at least Silent Hill 3, preferably both of them, I would tell them read nothing about Silent Hill 2, start with Born from a Wish first,
Mhm.
play through the game, get whatever ending you get, and then the canonical ending is the rebirth ending. Because that actually makes sense. Think about it. Born from a Wish is a short little, like 30 to 40-minute campaign where you play as Maria being created. Maria wakes up in a chair with a loaded pistol with one bullet, like she was going to kill herself. And she
Mhm.
doesn't really know anything about who she is or why she's here. She just knows that she has to find James, and she knows a couple of other basic things. And she realizes she knows a kid named Laura, but she doesn't know why. And so clearly, in that little intro, you're playing a woman who has memories of someone else, doesn't know why you exist, and you know you have to find James, and you know that it's serving a purpose. That's what Born from a Wish shows you. Then you play Silent Hill 2, and you get whatever ending you get. Then on New Game Plus, the items are in the game, and since you already understand the game and know its themes, you might think to yourself, "Well, I want to try to save Mary. Surely there's a way I can put Mary together. Surely I can futz with stuff and find a way to use Silent Hill's magic to save Mary. Surely that's got to be in this game somewhere." And then you are led to discover that by lore notes that were added in a New Game Plus and with the remaster, the re-release, or Rebirth, or whatever the hell it's called. Like no,
Mhm.
Rebirth is the name of the ending. But regardless, if you know about Silent Hill 1 and or 3, I think you would have a much better experience with Silent Hill 2, starting with Born from a Wish, playing the regular game, and then getting the Rebirth ending. Because that would show James's personal story, but it would bookend it with Silent Hill is just using James because Silent Hill wants the Dark God to be remade, and it needs to
Yes.
pick up where Alessa Gillespie failed.
Yes.
So That's how I would recommend the game be played to someone who likes and knows Silent Hill as a property who hasn't played Silent Hill 2. If you're not into Silent Hill, play the OG original Silent Hill for the PlayStation 2 because it looks better than the HD re-release. It looks better than the one for PC that came out first, unless you play the fan patched version, which looks immaculate and it's perfect. And that's the one that I played recently a couple years ago. So, and also I fired up my save and I looked through it again maybe 2 weeks ago, but I decided to just do my own research instead of playing through it again because I had so much to do. But that is what I would recommend. Best OG PlayStation 2 before all the added stuff. And if you like PC gaming, get the OG Silent Hill 2 for PC, the oldest that you can get, and then fan patch it. I think the oldest one you can get for PC, you can either torrent it or buy it somewhere. I forget. Is the original Xbox one. I think you can still get a ROM of that, and it still works in emulators. That is the best one to get because that's what the clan patch, the clan, listen to me, the fan patch uses to shore up. I say clan a lot because I'm a Warframe player, and saying a clan patch and clan duties, like instead of a guild, you say clan in Warframe. So I'll say that word all the time. It's not for
No,
reason.
it's okay.
But the fan patch with the OG ROM for emulator is definitely the way to go. But anyway, forgive me for bloviating about that. I love occult stuff and Lovecraft stuff in my horror movies. It's like one of my favorite genres, and that's what I love about Silent Hill. And if you bookend it with the things that we just talked about, that makes it a perfect Silent Hill story. That even though it's personally about James and his problems, it shows you it's in service to the bigger Silent Hill narrative. Now let's talk about the Rebirth ending.
Oh, yes.
So what do you have to say about it, and why do you think it's great and interesting? We'll talk about it.
Well, partly I like the darkness of it, and I think you sort of got it. I like the maturity that there was this. Again, what's a theme that you brought up already? Don't believe what you're told. It's consistent with that. And I just like the idea of this. Okay, this town is drawing people in. Eddie didn't manage to make it work. Angela didn't work. James is still a shot. And just use him as a tool. So in that case, it does change, I think, how Maria works. So I could understand objection to it like that. In that reading, Maria is, I believe, much... Well, maybe I'm not... That might actually not make sense. I would read Maria as being much more a tool of the town.
Yes, exactly. Which I believe she is meant to be from the beginning.
Yeah. But, yeah, I like how unbelievably dark it is that James has just been made to serve the town. He's not going to get what he wants. And the visuals of him just rowing out.
Oh, I know.
To the, like, you never see, but you don't need to. But there's just the island, you've been fed a little information out, and you can see something in the mist that was an old temple, and it's just a mystery. Lovecraft style. It's a mystery you will never get the full details of.
Which I think is perfect for this kind of storytelling. It's perfect. Like James, the ending is like she just said, James on a boat, and a big part, not a big part, but one of the parts of the game when you go through the weird labyrinthine crucible down in the old prison, if it's even real, underneath the historic society. When you finally come out of all that, poof, you're just right back in Silent Hill at the boat dock with a little rowboat. And you know that directly north from this place is the old hotel where your memories are with Mary. So James hops in a rowboat, and for like 2 or 3 minutes, you're just in the boat alone with James, foggy water on a placid lake, rowing towards a light in the distance. That's it. No dialogue, no nothing, only the softest and gentlest of ambient sounds. Not even a beautiful what's the music guy's name?
Akira Yamaoka.
Yamaoka, yeah. Not even Akira Yamaoka music, really. It's just this slow, serene... Again, like the walks we've talked about, like the descent, it's kind of like he's descending towards this final point of light. And the Rebirth ending is just him on the water, rowing a boat, going towards this weird island temple? You don't know. But the items that you have to collect in the game you read about this weird resurrection ritual. You have to collect different components for like a chalice and liquid and this weird other stuff, and you have to have all those items, and you have to check some other boxes and stuff. I don't remember exactly, but what the ending is suggesting is that Silent Hill shows James, and through Maria leads James to find books and items and ritual items that the occultists who Harry defeated in the first game, the town leads him to find that, and with the impetus of his wife, is recreating in James what Alessa was supposed to do with her daughter in the first one. It is Alessa, right? No.
Yeah, Dahlia. Dahlia
Dahlia.
Gillespie.
Dahlia in the first one. Dahlia Gillespie. Like Alessa's right. That's my bad. Forgive me for misspeaking and calling Dahlia Alessa earlier in the stream, guys.
That's
Forgive
okay.
me for that. If you've already timestamped and punched me appropriately in the comments, I'll salute you. But no, Dahlia, of course. Silent Hill makes him the new Dahlia and plays his own darkness against him, uses Maria to lead him to the ritual implements to get him to go to the temple and resurrect the dark god. So this, in my opinion, is really awesome and dark and Lovecraftian and hopeless. Like, I think Lovecraft would appreciate this ending and what Silent Hill is. And this is my second favorite ending after In Water.
Oh, nice. I'm chuffed to hear it. Yeah. Even with the like not canon thing, I was like, okay, good. I'm glad you like it, because
Like
I love how dark it is, basically. I'm a big fan of another game. Forgive me, folks, I've talked about this many a time, but Fatal Frame 2 was one of these.
I played two. I played the first one.
Yeah, the second one I would say is even better, but there's just that one. The first time you complete it, you're forced to get basically a bad ending. And the first time I got it, I was just absolutely shocked. And you have to keep playing through on increasing difficulty, and you still keep getting bad endings. And I ended up just loving this, like the absolute huevos to make you go through all that, and still you kind of fail. And it was only on the Xbox that they actually added a happy ending option that you need to complete on the hardest difficulty, and I think you have to have completed it 3 times to get that option.
Oh wow.
I like it, but I'm a bigger fan of just the brutal endings, to be honest.
Yeah. Especially for games that are supposed to be like, or stories that are supposed to be like dark and tragic anyway.
Totally.
I don't like it when just to please the player they give you a good ending. It's like, okay, at the end of a Shakespeare tragedy like Romeo and Juliet, it's not supposed to work out great. They're not supposed to ride off into the sunset. That's not what this is about.
Precisely. We brought it up briefly, but we have to mention it. Akira Yamaoka is the music guy for Silent Hill. I could be wrong on this. Forgive me, but I think it's Silent Hill 3 when he starts bringing in vocals. Were there any like vocal tracks for Silent Hill 2, or I may have forgotten them completely?
Each ending does get its own Akira Yamaoka song.
All of the music.
I
is
don't remember
glorious.
there being lyrics, but don't quote me either. I don't know, but I don't remember there being any vocals in my Silent Hill 2 experience. In the wonderful Akira Yamaoka tracks. I could be wrong about that.
No, I think
I know
you're
3
right.
had it. I know 3 had it.
Yeah, it's got the song "You're Not Here," which I bloody love. It's so good. And then 4 went really big on the vocals, and quite a lot of those I really like as well.
Unfortunately, have you ever played Silent Hill 4?
Oh yes.
Do you like it? I don't.
I
thought it was pretty awful, and I have the Silent Hill 4 soundtrack, which is amazing, and it's a remarkable choice to include almost none of that music in the game at any time, which I found very bizarre and terrible.
That would explain a lot, because I'd looked up the additional music and I did think, wait, this doesn't turn up. But Silent Hill 4, I think, something of a common thing in the horror world is the patched sequel, or the hastily modified sequel material. It's like this, as everyone should know, Silent Hill 4 was never meant to be a Silent Hill game, and it's quite awkwardly placed into the story.
Yes,
So,
correct.
just
And
like
also, Team Silent didn't want to make it a Silent Hill game. I think that's why they maybe made it as bad as it was in certain ways, or it was so weird in certain ways and not good.
yeah,
Maybe they just wanted it to tank so they could get out of the Silent Hill mines and do something else with their careers. I don't know.
yeah, there's some cool premises and mechanics in, but it didn't have enough to go on um, with how it tried to connect itself to the Silent Hill world. So yeah, not a hit for me. But I
Yeah.
just thought I'd mention it and praise the music.
The music is very good. And not just the music, but the sound design. In
Mm,
Silent Hill 2, for those of you that don't know, one of the things that makes it like a dream and not really scary is it has this enchanting, soothing, mysterious sound to it that really adds to the tone of the game. It's like when you're playing this, because of the sounds that things make, it's almost like they are a dreamlike fabrication of what sound you know that thing should make, but it's a little weird because it's a dream. Like when you go to open a door, but it's jammed and doesn't open, it makes this weird sound that sounds like you're rattling a chain inside a box, not like you're trying to open a door. And the radio static, like you find a little radio at the beginning of the game, one of the most perfect and beautiful devices ever put into a video game
mm,
is in Silent Hill 1 and 2, and I think 3 as well. The characters find a little radio at the beginning of the game. It's a little radio, hand radio can carry with them. And when you find it, it's making this bizarre noise on a static channel. Like, it's like these weird attenuated sounds. Not like a theremin, but like weird staticky sounds.
mm,
And it makes that sound when Silent Hill monsters get close. So you can turn it on or off if you want, but most people play with it on because it's a good tension building device.
mm.
Because a lot of the game, you're not having to fight monsters. You're just exploring this weird, completely depopulated, bizarre for no reason abandoned town and its many environs, and there's nothing there. But when you start hearing that weird sound come over the radio, you're like, oh no, something's going on. Something's weird. And here's the thing, you get that noise when you encounter creations of Silent Hill. Now, it's a bone of contention with people that the radio doesn't go off the first time James meets Maria, which I think is a missed opportunity. But,
Mm.
it happens in a cutscene. What are you going to do? But anyway, so the radio itself is beautiful sound design because it uses some innocuous sound that a radio shouldn't be making, that a radio doesn't make. Like it's almost like you're about to hit a channel that will actually you'll hear music or a radio ad, but it never quite gets there, and it's just weird attenuated sounds that are trying to happen. So that's really cool. Other sound design that's nice. The sound design when you hit monsters or stomp the life out of monsters, could you give them a little kick or a little stomp to end them once you get them down with a
Mm.
couple of bullets or a couple of whacks with something? The sound designs are all like a weird, crunchy, wet slap. And the sounds
Yeah.
that the enemies make aren't really sounds that a person or a creature would make. They're like dreamlike simulations of those sounds. It's
Mm.
very weird it's very hard to explain how weird and otherworldly it is unless you play it and feel it.
Oh,
But the
it's very
sound
jarring.
design, go ahead, sorry.
I was saying it's jarring. Like it'll also catch you out. Like you are not expecting the mannequins to make a kind of sexual noise,
Yeah, it's
or
weird.
the
Yeah.
what do they call the mandolins, the things that crawl under, and they have just.
The is it mandolin? I think it might be
It might
mandolin
be the thing that hangs
because they are
under
kind
the
of shaped like a
surface and
cello
just
or a fiddle.
they have this poor screeching sound. It's like oh, it's
It's
terrible.
weird. And another
Weird,
thing,
really. Mm.
like Pyramid Head doesn't have any like mechanical parts, but a lot of his, but when he's around, I don't know if we're supposed to think he's making them, but like we kind of hear weird metal on metal sounds. And
Mm.
again, it's spooky and weird. And you see he's got a big metal knife and a big metal head, but like he's not comprised of gears. He's not rubbing metal together when he's doing things, but those are the sounds that accompany him. So like the sound design is just top notch for creating this dreamlike fugue state that the player is stuck in with James. It's a very unique experience.
Mm. Yeah, it's really wonderful for just differentiating it from anything else, and uh, it's part of the reason I've gone back to it so many times. I saw someone point out a moment when you're initially heading towards a town, the game puts in some kind of footsteps behind you that
Oh yeah,
kind of
yeah.
overlaps yours, so you feel like you're being followed. But if you stop it, it stops.
Uh,
Devious
Silent,
stuff.
Silent Hill 2 doesn't do that, but it does do some weird stuff. If you'll notice, room, I forget the number, it's like 308 or 302 or 208, a regular room number, right? That room number shows up a lot of times around Maria and Mary and Discovery. Like, I
Mm.
think it's 4 or 5 times in the game. Like, you see it in the video, I think, or you see it in a cutscene. It's in when you get to room, whatever the room number is. It's like 208 or it's 302 Henry from 4. That might be how I remember too. Whatever it is, it's 308 or 208 or something like that. In the both the apartment complexes and in the hospital and in the hotel, that room number has something to do with it. You hear a mumble, a sound in pain, Mary calling out to James. Every time you get close to any room that has that number, something spooky and audible happens. I don't know if you picked up on that or not.
No, no, that's
Yeah,
brand new to me. Wonderful.
yeah. But next time you play through it, pay attention. Every time you get to the whatever room Mary and the VHS player or whatever is in at the end of the game, whatever room number that is, I forget. Whenever you're near that room, that number, the more I talk about it, the more I think it's 208, but I could be wrong. But every time you get to a near at or near that number, you find something related to James and or hear a sound related to Mary dying or Mary and James every time,
Mm.
which I think is interesting. And speaking of things that are throughout the game, I don't know if you noticed this or not because the game's kind of old and the meshes and textures aren't the best, but pretty much every corpse you see in the entire game is James's model. Did you know that?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I found
I
that
love
very
it.
interesting. I only thought it like once on my original playthrough. I think it was the second body you find where you get a key outside where it's brightly lit. I was like, hey, that kind of looks like James. And I just
Yes,
dismissed it as well. It's on a single disc. This is a very graphically complex game for the time. I just assumed they just to save on memory on the disc. They were just reusing James's model because it didn't matter. It wasn't
mm,
until my second and third playthroughs I started paying attention and realized that the dead guy in the chair, at least one, if not all, the corpses around Eddie, the third dead guy you find, I forget what state he's in. Maybe it was the drowned one. You find the dead guy outside with the key you need. Those are all James. James keeps coming across dead versions of himself.
yeah,
Are
just
those
a
the ones that
subconscious
failed?
projection of his death wish.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Like
saw some really good trivia that that some of the corpses around Eddie aren't his model until you
hmm.
defeat Eddie. Then they become the James model.
Oh, I never noticed that. I didn't know that. That's interesting. I didn't even know you could go back out of the locker and into the room where you first confront him there at the end.
Yeah, I
So,
was
so you're telling me if you leave the meat locker and go back into the room where the dead guy is slumped over on the cafeteria table, that becomes James. That becomes his model.
yeah, I'm going. I'm what's the name of the
Huh.
channel? There was this like massive SH2 iceberg thing, 2 hours long, and I watched a lot, and it just had so much good stuff.
You'll have to send me the link later. I'll watch it too.
Happily, happily. Um, God, I knew this would happen. Talking about such a great game, but we have flown over the 2 hour mark. Um,
Do you want to talk about some trivia and some weird stuff before we get out of here, or do you want to
oh,
go ahead?
absolutely,
Because I have a
absolutely.
few things that don't really fit anywhere else I'd like to talk
No,
about.
let's go for it. Let's go for it. I think we can do 10 minutes of trivia. Let's rock
Sure.
it.
Obviously, we know what Laura sort of represents. She sort of represents what could be between Mary and James. So I think that it is intended that we are to believe Laura is a real person. That
Mhm.
that she was brought here because of Mary, and she was brought here by Silent Hill's machinations for James or to test James. Now, with what I know about Silent Hill, especially with Born from a Wish and the Rebirth ending, why would Silent Hill do that? This is why I think Laura is also a manifestation like Maria. This is just me. I've not read this anywhere. No one gave me this idea. But when you think about the quote unquote good ending, the leave ending, where James is leaving with Laura out through the cemetery.
Mm.
On the surface, I think that's supposed to be Laura was brought here for whatever reason. James saves her, does a heroic thing, fesses up to the truth, and they get to leave Silent Hill. But in the Maria ending, not. But we were shown that they are leaving Silent, or we're supposed to think they're about to leave Silent Hill. They're going back to James's car, but Maria isn't real. How can she exist outside of Silent Hill? Can Silent Hill make real people? I don't think so. I think that the Maria ending is James being stuck in the loop and it's all starting over again, and his microcosm here in Silent Hill is just about to start over again.
Mm.
So why am I to think that Laura and the Leave ending isn't the same? Why is the Crucible just not starting over again with Laura as a companion instead of Maria? Because Silent Hill learns it can't exploit the dead wife to trap James here. It can exploit his wishes to do right by his dead wife. So Laura is the projection that keeps him trapped in Silent Hill.
It's
That's
like
what
a
I think.
devil's advocate ending sort of thing. Like,
Yeah,
okay, couldn't get you
yeah.
that way. I'll get you another
So
one. Yeah.
so from what I've read with the interviews of the voice actors and the director guy, I don't think that's what we're supposed to think. I don't think Laura is supposed to be fabricated like Maria. I don't think that. I think we are meant to think that Laura just ended up here. Maybe she came here to visit Mary because she thought she was going to be here. Maybe the orphanage is nearby. We know that there's an orphanage in Silent Hill from 1, 3, and 4. We know that there's an
Mm.
orphanage. We know that. So maybe she was just here, and maybe that's why they met. And I do think there is some dialogue about Mary and Laura having met because of the orphanage proximity and the sisters taking
Mhm.
care of Mary when she was sick. I think that there's dialogue or lore notes about that in the non-original version I haven't played. I think that in either the HD remaster or the one that included Born from a Wish that came out for Xbox like 2 or 3 years later, I think they added some more stuff that made the Laura Mary connection more plausible. I
Mm.
want to say that I read that. I don't think that I'm just inventing that. I think I read that in my last couple of weeks, but I can't say that for sure because my mind is full of Silent Hill 2 uh, conjecture right now. But I think I read that. But I remember doing my research. It sort of came to me. I think Laura, in my head canon, is just a projection to trap James there because Silent Hill wants James to do the Rebirth ending. So I think that Laura is also a more clever projection, one that Silent Hill learned it could use where Maria failed. It's sort of like covering your bases, like, having
Mm.
two holdout pistols hidden in your room instead of one. Like, it had Maria and Laura to make sure if James overcame one, he might fall for the other and still go through with the thing that it needs him to do eventually if it keeps him stuck in the loop.
As a huge fan of dark endings, I would massively support this.
Okay. Well, that was a weird personal thing that didn't really fit anywhere else I wanted to bring up. So, anything you want to bring up? Any weird trivia now that I shared a thing that you want to go over?
Let's see. I always love that there was a little reference. The careful who stares into the abyss, it stares back into you. That you can encounter, but I really enjoy this one little thing. The sign in the graffiti in Neely's bar. There was a hole here, now it's gone.
Uh-huh.
That has bugged me for ages, and I've always wondered. It just sort of sticks with you. Like, who did that?
Yeah.
Was that a previous visitor?
Was it James in a previous cycle? We don't know.
Oh.
Because remember, the Dark Tower stuff was already out. Stephen King was a known author. So this whole and he wasn't the only one to write about cycles and stuff. So like I think I don't know if like Wheel of Time by Jordan was out by this point or not, but like in European fantasy fiction and also just high concept fiction of any kind, characters that are caught in like not like Groundhog Day time loop, but like having to live through a Sisyphean challenge over and over
Mm.
again. That is a trope in European fiction.
Oh,
So
yes.
maybe the weird like written in blood or written in or carved into walls, maybe the strange messages that set the tone in Silent Hill, maybe James in a previous cycle made those for himself. Maybe it's
Mm.
someone else trapped here that we've never met. And now I remember something about the in water ending. since you and I are big time backtrackers and we retrace our steps and look for everything to make sure we miss nothing,
Hmm.
one of the trigger events that you have to do or one of the events that guarantees the in water ending is when you're back at that place in South Vale, I think, with the there once was a hole here and now there's not.
Mm.
After a certain point in the game, there's another message written there about
Oh,
you should just join her in death. You should be dead too, James, or something like that. And seeing that and walking up to that additional writing on the wall is one of the key flags for getting the in water ending. And I think it's right beside where the there once was a whole thing here is.
amazing! Oh, I love this.
I
I
could be
mean,
misremembering that, but I think it's there.
at
I
that
think what I'm
point,
talking about is there.
gosh, at that point, it's almost like Silent Hill is doing the graffiti itself for James.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
maybe so, maybe so.
and maybe there was a hole here. Now it's gone. Like, oh, we were missing someone. We needed a new worker. We needed a new Mark. You're
Hmm.
here. You know, there was a hole here. We're lacking something. Now it's gone because you're here. We got you, James. Yeah, that's so many points like that are fantastic. But
Hmm.
yeah, I will. I think we might have to round it off here. I will
Okay.
absolutely send you
Well,
the iceberg video, and
I
I think I'll link it in the description as well. Because if people want more trivia, it's
then
for someone.
I had
Oh,
something typed
please!
up and prepared for my closing thoughts, and it's very short. It's just a few sentences. Can I read
Oh,
it?
fantastic! Absolutely,
This
absolutely.
is my conjecture and closing thoughts. That what I think you are supposed to feel when you play the game, and it is what I think and feel now that I've ruminated on the game for years. Man is a complicated creature with myriad facets of experience. James was a real person. You are a real person. A real person can't be easily defined by the best idea they ever had, the worst sin they ever committed, nor the saddest event in their life, or in his life. All the experiences a single person has cultivated led to what decision he might make when faced with a serious life obstacle. I think the creators of Silent Hill 2 leaned into this heavily for the game's endings. Except for the joke endings, and perhaps the Rebirth ending, which is more about Silent Hill than James, each of the three endings shows a different choice the same man could reasonably make at the end of a difficult personal journey of pain and loss. Excuse me. What do you think? Do you think that that sort of
Mm.
sums up the why of the story?
Yeah, absolutely. It's this. You use the term crucible a lot. I think it's true.
Yes.
It is a test, and
Yeah.
it's nice that there's, especially if we take your interpretation of the lore ending, that he's got some wiggle room, but he's still fundamentally James,
Yeah.
and there's a limited number of options he can take. It
Man is
feels
frail.
true
Man
to
will
him.
die. Man is weak. Man is often, unfortunately, defined by his frailties more than he is his strengths. And
Mm.
I think that this is very evident with the James character. No matter what ending you pick, it's sad, it's dark, it deals with him having to make decisions. And the why of his decisions is a little gray on purpose. But
Mm.
you are along for the ride of a regular man with regular problems who, like many of us, unfortunately, have to face darknesses of abuse and death and loss and sadness at too young of an age. And James is like everybody else. He has problems. He might have good traits, but he has bad ones. He has good days, he has bad days. He's got skeletons in his closet. But, like most people, there's a good man in there somewhere. And you get to see that man because you stay with James. You're James's dream companion through this experience. And it shows you that the worst of James and the best of James does not define James. James is more than that. He's a culmination of the people he's interacted with, his hopes, his dreams, his pains, his losses. And it's a very human experience. It's a very human story, despite how surreal it is. And that was just my closing thoughts I wanted to leave the listener with.
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah. At one level, it's a warning about the very understandable risk of being defined by your damage. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, it's good, and in a, and I'm making air quotes there, which no one can see, but air quotes horror game. It's a deeply mature message, and very much worth considering. And that's why this game is so worth discussing. Yeah, you've been absolutely fantastic to talk about this
Well, thank you.
years.
I
It was
had a wonderful
brilliant.
time, Chloe. Thank you for inviting me to do this. I had a wonderful time.
That's an absolute delight. Um, I'll leave a link to your channel in the description. I'll leave a link to the iceberg video as well. And folks who are listening to this, I hope you enjoyed it. This has been something like Yizz and I have been talking about Silent Hill 2 for so long.
I think it's been over a year we've wanted to talk about this together.
Yeah, I'm really glad we made it happen. This has been a treat. When this comes out, there should be one further Halloween night video. So I hope you'll check that out. That is a fun conversation with a special guest. And please do check out the rest of the series. And if you aren't already, please do consider supporting me by joining as a member, because if you do that, then you will access all of the special Halloween content that I made this year. So sort of push the boat out on this one. And so I think you'll really enjoy that. Yes, thank you again. I really enjoyed this.
I really enjoyed it too, and I look forward to the next time. And maybe next year for Halloween, we can cover another element of this. Maybe talk about the blooper remake, or talk about why we like Silent Hill apart from number two, or something like that. But I had a really great time sharing this and getting to really relive a lot of why I love it, doing my research in the last couple of weeks. I've really enjoyed this, the whole process leading up to this. I had a great time. Thank you again. And please do support Chloe's channel. She does great work, and she's a kind old soul.
Thank you ever so much, and happy Halloween. All right,
Happy Halloween, everyone!